you doing, wrestling fans? And welcome to another edition of John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight Podcast. We are the only podcast that brings you back 30 years with vintage audio featuring some of the biggest names of that time. And this episode is loaded with special guests. And we'll explain more about that in a couple minutes. The Pro Wrestling Spotlight covered all the news stories and breaking developments that happened in real time. And now we get to relive those moments right here on this podcast. I want to first and foremost thank everybody who's out there who've kind of rediscovered the podcast, all the positive feedback we've been getting about our last several episodes featuring Mark Madden from last week and Eric Bischoff, Jackie Bernard McCauley, and Chris Owens with the Andre the Giant episode. So, yeah, I mean, it's been really fun to bring guests on, and people are loving that we're able to bring guests on most recently, and we're going to continue to do that today here on the program. 30 years ago this week, we had several big developments in pro wrestling. First and foremost, it's the 30th anniversary of the loss of Kerry Von Erich, who committed suicide on February 18th in 1993. Our Pro Wrestling Spotlight radio shows from back then aired on February 20th, so just 2 days after we'd learned of the passing of Kerry Von Erich. It was also our return to WEVD, back to New York City, and we had some challenges there, which we'll be discussing. Paul E. Dangerously was in the studio with us 30 years ago. We also had Cactus Jack on the show. So we have a big one today because we're going to be bringing on two very special guests. We're going to review some of the clips from 30 years ago, from February 20th, 1993, and the two special guests that will be joining us. We don't play clips with them. We rather opted to get their memories of what Kerry Von Erich meant to them personally and the legacy of the Von Erich family. And I'm talking about Kevin Von Erich, who will join us from Hawaii in a very, very special interview. And also James Beard, who knew the Von Erich family well. James was a referee during all those glory days of world-class championship wrestling, knew the family very, very well, and he'll come on to reminisce about Kerry Von Erich as well with us today. I want to remind everybody that our Patreon page is doing very well. There's a lot of content up there, and I won't dwell on it too much, but go to patreon.com/John Arezzi. $5 a month gets you in the door. And there's just tons of content on there for you to enjoy, not just all the archives of this radio show from 30 years ago and even earlier than that, but a lot more. So go to patreon.com/John Arezzi. And I do want to plug our eBay page, ebay.com/USR/Matt Memories. Lots of items on there. Put up some really special vintage wrestling stuff from the Weekend of Champions 1991. Some autograph photos of Buddy Rogers and Lou Thez that were actually inscribed to me personally. Photographs and other vintage stuff. I'm going to be putting up some really cool stuff over the next few days. So check that out at eBay. Just look for Matt Memories, and we'll be more than happy to take your business. There's a lot of stuff up there. I want to bring on Marsh. Marsh, our producer, creative director. Marsh, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. This is a cool show to put together.
Yeah, lots of different elements.
Yeah.
We had
a busy one.
We had 30 years ago, we had a daytime show. We had the nighttime show, WEVD. And of course, we had in-studio guests, and even for this podcast, some special guests. So it really is a jam-packed show today. There's a lot for us to uncover today.
Yeah. There's a lot of elements.
Yes, indeed. And of course, we're very happy that that this episode is so diverse with the different types of even the moods between obviously the unfortunate news about Kerry but the hilarity of Paulie, the Cactus Jack call, the phone callers, some technical difficulties. So why don't we get right down to it and begin reviewing the show from 30 years ago? And
absolutely, we're going to start the show like we start all of our 30-year-old shows, with Don Liable.
I'll tell you what, I'll let you get ready and we'll get right to the capsule. As John said, leading things off, tragic note. Kerry Atkinson, known worldwide as Kerry Von Erich, the Texas tornado, died this past Thursday, February the 18th, in Denton County, Texas, as a result of a single self-inflicted gunshot wound to his chest. Now, in piecing together the events of this tragedy, at approximately 1:30 p.m. on Thursday, Kerry arrived at his father's farm and told him that he wanted to drive around the property. Now, when Kerry hadn't come back, Fritz went searching for him, and about a quarter of a mile from the home, Kerry was found. Jack Atkinson, known as Fritz Von Erich to millions of wrestling fans, could only comment, and I quote, "I can't say anything. I don't know what to say," end of quote. There was no suicide note found. Last year, Kerry was convicted for forging drug prescriptions in the Dallas area and had been on probation since. Last month, Kerry was arrested for narcotic possession, which later tested to be cocaine. On Thursday, Kerry was indicted by a grand jury and an arrest warrant was issued for him. Now, according to Kerry's probation officer, Gary Hunter, when he last saw him on January 27th, Kerry seemed suicidal and that his drug problem had taken over him. Kerry rejected Hunter's advice to seek counseling. When learning of Kerry's death, Judge Braca, who had been presiding over his court appearances, was said to have been taken back. And quoting Judge Braca, "My heart sank for him. He may or may not have had to go to jail," end of quote. In published reports, Kerry's attorney, Charles Caperton, stated Kerry had no money. At the time of Kerry's passing, his brother Kevin was wrestling in the Virgin Islands. Kevin Von Erich is the only remaining child of Jack and Doris Atkinson, as 5 boys have died. Ironically, Kerry was supposed to wrestle last night in the Dallas Sportatorium against the Angel of Death. Well, as reported last week here, unfortunately for the sport of pro wrestling, the big news currently, as John said earlier, is taking place outside of the ring and outside of the arenas and headed for the judicial courtrooms. According to the Associated Press reports, Geraldo Rivera and his 2 television shows, Geraldo and Now It Can Be Told, are being sued by Vince McMahon Jr. Geraldo's comment to the suit, quote, "I consider it a mark of honor to be sued by the World Wrestling Federation. I'll body slam them in court," end of quote. The suit charges false, malicious, and extortionate allegations of rape were made against Vince McMahon Jr. Well, the Associated Press also reported that on this past Thursday, the New York Post and columnist Phil Mushnick and the Post had a lawsuit filed against them in federal court in Bridgeport, Connecticut by Vince McMahon Jr. The suit claims McMahon Jr. was the victim of a smear campaign which has tried to destroy Vince's business and life. Allegedly, McMahon Jr. claims the Post columnist made a series of false and malicious attacks against him and the World Wrestling Federation beginning in July of 1991. The allegations against Mushnick include falsely portraying Vince as a child abuser, child molester, a homosexual, and worse than a fictional character, Hannibal Lecter, who ate his victims. It was reported that McMahon Jr.'s attorney, Jerry McDivitt, expects his client will be seeking millions in damages. Staying in the courtroom arena, Jim Hellwig, professionally known as the Ultimate Warrior, who is a past holder of the World Wrestling Federation heavyweight title, has filed a $7 million lawsuit against Vince McMahon for, according to published reports, alleging breach of contract and non-payment of royalties. Hellwig is represented by attorney Michael Kennedy, who has had Ivana Trump as those among his clientele. Now, since exiting the Federation in late 1992, Hellwig has had but 2 matches. Turning to news in between the ring ropes, Ric Flair lost his final WWF match to Bret Hart's Sharpshooter on February 10th in Dortmund, Germany, before a sellout crowd estimated at 13,000. Pro Wrestling Torch Weekly is reporting that on March 7th, the WWF will broadcast a live 60-minute special on the Fox network from Fayetteville, North Carolina. And closer to home, look for Hulk Hogan to appear on this Monday's Raw show at the Manhattan Center. WWF ring announcer Howard Finkel made his pro debut as a wrestler and he went to a no contest with manager Harvey Whippleman in Memphis, Tennessee on February the 8th. And on tomorrow night's WCW pay-per-view, expect to see the Nature Boy appear. The Observer reports Flair signed a 3-year deal at $425,000 per. And Davey Boy Smith will also be taking part on the show, as he will be opposing Wild Bill Irwin. And Missy Hyatt is now managing the Barbarian. Turning to USWA news, the Gilbert brothers, Eddie and Doug, apparently are feuding with each other, so that's going to be pretty interesting to watch. And add the Steiners versus the Head Shrinkers to WrestleMania 9's lineup. Finally, in pro wrestling this week, 1976, 17 years ago in Miami, Florida, Dusty Rhodes and Thunderbolt Patterson were victorious over King Curtis and the Missouri Mauler. And in Tokyo, Japan, Wahoo McDaniel and Davey O'Hannon scored a win over Giant Baba and Jumbo Tsuruta by DQ. I'm Don Label reporting. Capsule time, 10:10.
Okay, Donnie. Thanks for the tribute for Kerry and everything. When I first heard the news, it really wasn't a shock. I had seen Kerry less than a month ago in Philadelphia, and to be honest with you and to the listeners out there, he had a match that night, substituting for Kevin Sullivan, and he didn't look like he was straight in the ring, first of all. He had a lot of problems. It's just a sad situation with this entire family. But Kerry definitely had problems, and I really feel that those closest to him maybe should have insisted on a longer rehabilitation for him. It's a tragic situation.
John, if I may interrupt, what really made it hit home with me is Kerry just turned 33. His birthday was February 3rd. And thinking of him and thinking of myself, that how relatively young he is, and all that he has experienced so quickly, so fast, that he's had to deal with, back in between 1982 and 84, without a doubt, he was wrestling's #1 teeny bopper, heartthrob, whatever you want to label him. I mean, he couldn't go anywhere without being mobbed. Ever since he was a young kid, he grew up in an athletic family. He was into throwing the discus. He held a junior college world record for men under 20. He went to University of Houston. Kerry, one of his biggest goals was he wanted to get into the Olympics, and of course, when he tried out, that year is when President Carter had us boycott, so we never got to do that. But just thinking back into May of '84, for when he beat Ric Flair in Texas Stadium before the thousands and thousands of people, winning that match in memory of David, his brother who had recently passed away. Now, he was only the champ for less than 3 weeks, but that match alone with Flair, the intensity involved in it was tremendous, and I'm glad that I saw it when it did happen, and I'm glad I have it on tape. But you have to remember, he was a young kid in a man's game. He was always on the road. He was dealing with people that wanted to maybe get somewhere because of him. Every title there was in Texas, Kerry held. Tag team, 6-man tag. He had the motorcycle accident, I believe, around 86, and that started a downfall for him. He came back. Then they had the big pay-per-view in '88 in December, where he and Lawler went at it to try to unify the titles. Lawler had the AWA belt at the time, and Kerry was the WCCW champ. There was controversy in trying to stop the match from ever taking place because of Kerry's missing a limb. Then the controversial ending of that, where he was bleeding. They said too much from the arm. He came to the WWF, and almost immediately he became the Intercontinental champ. And then almost as quickly, less than 3 months later, he lost the belt. There was so many ups and downs for anybody. Of the most strong will to deal with and to accept and to put in perspective that when you're somebody that is told from day one you're expected to do this, you're going to be great, you are great, you have to be great, it's just tremendous to deal with.
Yeah, and just the fact that not only his brothers, the deaths of the brothers who preceded him, and just the eeriness of him committing suicide almost in the exact same spot as his brother Chris shot himself last September. it's hard to fathom. It's hard to put, it's hard to believe. It's almost a surreal story about this tragic family, who I call almost like the Kennedy family of pro wrestling. There'll be a lot of tributes coming in, but there's also not very much from the people I've spoke to, and I reiterated this a little while ago. There wasn't a lot of shock. People weren't really that shocked to hear about this. You got to wonder, now, the only surviving son of the 6 brothers, Kevin, what's going through his head, and what's going through the mother and the father, Fritz Von Erich and Doris Von Erich, at this very moment.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, and
Definitely
even
somber. It was, it was like, it was such a downer to talk about it, but
yeah,
it was a tragic story.
You guys even get more into the family side of things too. You even talk about how Kerry was born almost right after the one son who was like
The
a big
first son.
9. The first son 9
Yeah,
had
who
electrocuted
died
himself.
electrocuted, right? I mean, wow. Later in this program, we'll have Kevin Von Erich talking about his memories of his brother and the Von Erich legacy, and in just a little bit, James Beard will be joining us. So we talk about Kerry a lot, but I really am listening back now and fascinated with, Donnie and the little anecdotes and the little things that he remembers that I certainly did not, and the things that he brings up. And it was kind of interesting when I found out we were going to interview Kevin, and Donnie called me about an hour before we were getting with Kevin. And he was like, "Oh my goodness, you're going to talk to him, and ask him about this or ask him about that." And he gave me a couple of wonderful questions that really sparked Kevin as well. They were things that maybe people don't ask him, which everyone's going to hear in just a little bit.
Yeah.
So I got to thinking, and this is a little off topic, Marsh. I got to thinking, Donnie added so much each and every week with the capsule and the memories and just his encyclopedic knowledge of the business. And I'm like, how do I integrate Donnie back into this thing? And I had a conversation with him, and I said, Donnie, what do you think about, like the old days, not on video. We had a little problem, having him, set up a camera and be able to deal with us visually, but via the telephone, I mean, it would be kind of cool to bring him on, not every single week, but certainly, maybe once a month, and just get his insights and have him kind of put together a little bit of a capsule and maybe talk about some things that that everyone will find entertaining. So he agreed to do it. So in the next episode, where we have the Ultimate Warrior on the show, I mean, in a shoot interview that really he had not done before with anybody, I invited Donnie to come on, and we'll bring him on via telephone, just like the old days. And I think that'll add a little insight to what we did back then, and have a little conversation with, my longest and dearest friend for over 50 years. So Donnie will be joining us on a semi-regular basis. Let's put it that way.
I think that's going to be awesome, because I was actually noticing that as I put this clip together. This clip was a longer clip because he added so much after the capsule. Like, he really put into perspective, because like the first thing you said, I mean, it sounds a little harsh in hindsight, but I'm sure at the time, I mean, it just made sense, where it's like, hey, no one's really super shocked. But that standalone statement doesn't mean as much until you hear Donnie say, yeah, because think of all of the things he had to deal with at the ages he had to deal with them. And he really plotted it out. And I was like, yeah, no, like, it's a lot for any human.
Yeah. And the loss of his brothers. I mean,
exactly.
How can you, I mean, that's traumatic enough, and everything that he had to go through. And then, of course, the motorcycle accident and losing a limb, and then really getting hooked to painkillers. I mean, what a tragic life, but what a wonderful life he lived too, in so many ways, and I'm just kind of like, this brings back a flood of memories from 30 years ago. But But anyway, I mean, we're here to talk about him, and I know we have more to cover, and we have James Beard coming up. But I think you have a couple of clips before we get to James.
I got a little more, and there was a very notable comment that Donnie had made about how he was being just constantly swarmed by like people wherever he was. His fame was so big, and he was like a teeny bopper sensation. And as a side note story, a friend of mine grew up in Denton, Texas, and even told me he used to work at a water park, and he recalls the day that Kevin came through because it was such chaos of him just being swarmed by fans and following him everywhere. And he said that he couldn't have been more nice to them. And more people you talk to on this show, like Terry Sims, you interviewed him briefly in there, got a couple of snippets. I didn't pull a clip from it, but he said basically more or less that he didn't realize how hard that Kerry was going to take the things that had happened in his personal life, and so that he was just such a good guy and was impossible not to like. He was just so likable and constantly signing autographs for fans. He was just always putting himself out in that way. And that became really the story of these 2 episodes and of the interviews, was just all the positive things about his presence. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's certainly a today was one of those days where maybe you did need a morning show and a nighttime show. There was so much going on. So these initial clips are, of course, from the daytime show, the Pro Wrestling This Week on WNYG, and then we're going to kick it over later to WEVD, where we're back at the big station in New York City. So really very historic day in the history of the Pro Wrestling Spotlight. And then you have to, take something that really was good news of us returning there, and it was just a kind of a somber morning because of the news about Kerry.
And just before you take calls, you do mention that that Kerry was trying almost too hard to convince you that he was going to be fine and he was going to be there and make all your dates. And so you didn't actually end up booking him, but he got booked on the show anyways by somebody else and came out. And all you said was like, yeah, once he was there, he was amazing with the fans. He was just so good and gracious and signing stuff. So again, it became like, hey, if he got there and you were in his presence, it was like a joy.
Yeah.
But that does bring us to right then you start taking the callers, and your first caller, a young Brian from Long Beach.
We're going to go to the phones right now. Brian from Long Beach, you're first today on the program.
Hey, hi.
How you doing?
I want to know how Kevin Von Erich's taking the whole thing.
Well, there has been no public comment yet from Kevin. He was wrestling down in, I believe, Puerto Rico. I think he was in Puerto Rico, and he was on his way. Matter of fact, let me look at some of my notes here. No, actually, Kevin was wrestling in the Virgin Islands, and he was on his way back to Texas. It's going to be hard to see what a public comment from Kevin is going to be. He's lost 5 brothers. And
is Paulie and Medusa coming to the WWF?
Not to my knowledge. Paulie is interested in maybe segueing his career into the mainstream. He has not, as far as what he's told me, really had any lengthy discussions with the WWF. I believe he might have talked to them, but nothing serious. And Medusa, there's been rumors floating around that she had been talking about coming in and managing Shawn Michaels, but that is just a rumor right now.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, take care.
Wow, a young Brian Last once again with just like these short, direct comments, questions, and then he's out. He's had
That's exactly what I was about to say. Was I like how concise he's always is in these clips. He's like, "This is my question. Okay, bye."
Yeah, that was it. He gets what he wants and he gets out. That's kind of crazy. But it's really fascinating to listen back to. Of course, Brian has become such a great broadcaster and podcast co-host with Jimmy Cornette and
an encyclopedia in his own right.
Yes, he is. He's a great historian in so many different ways, and I remember fondly the days that I worked with him. I mean, I'll always say that. But listening to him as a kid from so many years ago, he was focused. He was focused
and prepared.
Yes, he was.
I wonder if part of that was just because he knew you had one phone line. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
Because there's a few calls you get from kids where you say, "Spit it out, man. You don't got much time."
Right.
You just didn't want to be that guy who you told to spit it out.
Yeah. Certainly changes at EVD as we had multiple phone lines. So hopefully as we listen to and review shows coming up, we'll hear from Brian from Long Beach on the big show as well.
Yeah, hopefully. Let's see some of the other callers you got in. You kind of break down all the deaths of the Von Erichs, like how each one died, because I thought it was kind of wild that it was suicide, overdose, accidental, that none of them were not tragic.
There aren't natural causes by any stretch of the imagination on any of them, really.
Yeah. And I couldn't help but snicker again, because at the end of that caller who said, I noticed that they all died around these ages and stuff. And the very end, you're like, anything else? You're like, yeah, Sid Vicious coming back? And I was like, okay.
If you want to hear it all, go to patreon.com/John Arezzi, and the entire show, unedited, with commercials. The complete shows are there for your enjoyment.
Yeah. And the major reason I didn't pull like a ton of clips, I mean, we got about 7 good clips on this one, was because I know the interviews are going to take up time as well. And so, but another call comes in from a fan talking about Andre. Just wanted to talk about how he'd met him one time, and you guys talk about his dwarfing a beer bottle in his hand. And someone else calls in and just talks about how they met Kerry, and it was really sad. They met him at your convention, and he was just so nice. So again, the trick wasn't like, was he likable? It was, the tragedy of all the rest. You did tell everybody to stay off the line, not to call in, because you wanted to get Cactus on the line. And you finally got him in. So I pulled the clip of the beginning of that, because the rest of the conversation with Cactus after this clip is he's really promoting his upcoming match with Paul Orndorff. And it just seemed a little off topic.
Yeah.
For the context of this particular review.
No problem. They could hear the whole thing on Patreon.
Yeah. So here's Cactus.
All right. So what we're going to do now is get on the phone with Cactus, and maybe we can even speak to Cactus's son today, since it's his birthday. And also, on a personal note, my niece, Gabrielle, out in Shirley, Long Island, turns 3 years old today. Have a big birthday party to go to before we head to New York City for WEVD tonight. And little Gabrielle, happy birthday to you also. Maybe I can hook you up with Cactus Dewey down the road when you both grow up. And what we got here, I guess we're getting ready to bring on the man from Truth or Consequences. Tomorrow night in Asheville, North Carolina, he's got a tremendous match, one of his favorite matches, Falls Count Anywhere, at the big pay-per-view promoted by WCW. And today is a very special day for Cactus Jack. Cactus, are you with us?
I'm with you, John.
How you doing?
I'm with you 100%.
Well, first of all, I want to take the time out to wish Cactus Dewey, your young son, very, very happy birthday.
First birthday.
His first birthday.
That's right. So he's celebrating in his birthday suit.
Uh-huh.
So am I, but for that matter. It's not a pleasant thought, is it, Josh? Well, thanks for that. Thanks for the congratulations. He's having a good time. He's got a couple of toys.
Well, I know I spoke to you recently, and of course tomorrow you got the big match. Tonight on the WEVD show in New York, when we make our return, the focus, as you know, is a very tragic situation this week with the death of Kerry Von Erich. But I did want to bring you on because you do have a match tomorrow with Orndorff.
Yeah.
It is one of your favorites.
It's my favorite, my single favorite.
Yes.
First, let me say about Kerry Von Erich that people had a lot of things to say about Kerry over the years, but none of them were ever bad. He was a unique person, and I will say a prayer for his family, because they've got to be in a lot of trouble. It's a tragic family, and I'm sorry that happened to him. I don't know the full story, but it's a big loss for wrestling.
Did you know Kerry personally?
Yeah, I knew Kerry real well. We wrestled a lot in Texas, and then I saw him after Texas, in independent shows and things like that, and I always liked him. He was a hard guy not to like.
Yeah, he went out of his way to be friendly to a lot of people, and
yeah, he was a good-natured person. He was, like I said, people always told stories about Kerry. Most of them were real funny, but they say the one thing you can't say is that anyone in that family, was ever mean to anyone, ever tried to hurt anyone. They were just nice people.
Well, very a sad situation, especially one surviving brother now, and you got to wonder what the future is for that family. Of course, it's been torn apart.
Yeah, I mean, there's another example of how everybody loved Kerry Von Erich, and that comes direct from Mick Foley, Cactus Jack.
Yeah, he had a lot of time in Texas, from what I remember. Cactus.
Oh yeah. Some of those tapes that he has that when I first met him, and I had never seen him work, and then he showed me the tape after he did the Pro Wrestling Spotlight for the first time in September of 1989, and I was just blown away by the guy's talent, and I knew that this guy was going to be a superstar back then.
Oh. Yeah.
But right now, I mean, our first interview, unless you have another clip to play, or we can get to our first guest for today.
Well, I'll wrap up the morning show with just this statement about, because it kind of comes up again. I didn't pull the clip on the second interview with Cactus, but that it is notable. He wanted his legacy to be the Falls Count Anywhere match, the same way that Dusty had the bull rope match and Ivan Koloff has the Russian chain and Blackjack Mulligan with the bunkhouse. He thought that Falls Count Anywhere was going to be what he was going to be really known for. And it was kind of funny to listen to, because had Hell in a Cell not happened, probably would have been.
It probably would have been, but Hell in a Cell will be the match that he's always identified with.
Yeah,
forever. Yeah,
and then he does tell you, call me tonight for the EVD show. He absolutely tells you to call him. So
yeah, and we do. All right, we'll go to our first guest. I mean, it was really a pleasure to be able to get a couple of guests on this show, and we'll bring Kevin Von Erich on later on in the show. But right now, we have an interview, and we're going to bring on a guy that knew the family intimately, a guy by the name of James Beard. So why don't we go to that right now? We're back with the Pro Wrestling Spotlight, and of course, this episode, we are covering what we did 30 years ago, the week of February 20th, 1993, and of course, it was the devastating news back then that we had lost Kerry Von Erich, and for this episode, we really are fortunate to have some guests to talk about the legacy of the Von Erich family and what they meant to the pro wrestling business. And of course, with Kevin Von Erich participating in this program, which was an absolute blessing. We're about to bring somebody else on who was so instrumental in those glory days years ago. And he's a guy that spent well over 25 years in the business, including his stays at World Class, USWA, GWF, Japan, and even a stint with the WWF for a short period of time. He's been a referee. He's been a promotions man, a creative consultant. He was a booker, a producer, writer, trainer, so many different hats that this gentleman wore. So let's bring on James Beard. James.
Hey, John, how you doing? No, thank you.
Oh, I'm doing great. Welcome to the Pro Wrestling Spotlight podcast.
Great to be here. Pleasure. Absolutely.
Yeah. We've run into each other at CAC reunions, I believe, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
We've certainly met. Yeah. And I really appreciate you coming on, because this was a hard thing to cover 30 years ago, and it's even sometimes a harder thing to talk about today. Because of the impact that the Von Erichs and Kerry and the entire family made on pro wrestling. So why don't we jump into it? First, I want to ask you, where are you based now? Are you still in Texas, or are you somewhere else?
I am. I'm still in Texas. I live about 90 miles east of Dallas. That's my home. Actually, my hometown is around Tyler. And lived there, except for when I was working full time in the business. Of course, I was living in Dallas, but I moved back home as soon as I got a chance to get out of Dallas, for sure. The traffic. Yeah.
And what are you doing these days? Are you still involved with wrestling at all?
Oh yeah, I'm still involved. I'm helping a few different promotions, just mostly behind the scenes, helping with a couple of teaching promotions, and that's kind of my thing right now. I'm trying to work with as many young people as I can, trying to help out and maybe kind of pass it along, I guess. That's the main thing.
Paying it forward for sure. So
exactly.
It's good to know you're still in the business, because you spent over 25 years in pro wrestling.
Well, yeah, actually almost 40. 30,
almost
30
40.
Something. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When did you get started?
First stuck my toe in the business, I guess, in around 85, and then I was in the music before that, and in fact, I continued to play music a little bit when I first started in the business, and then I kind of became in demand, and it got to be make a choice one way or the other, and I jumped out of the frying pan into the fire,
Yeah, definitely. The music business is an interesting business. I've been in it as well for many, many years.
Yeah.
But the pro wrestling business is unlike any other business.
For sure.
When you say you jumped into the fire, I mean, I could definitely relate to that because
you know what I'm trying to say then. Yeah.
I absolutely do. When did you first meet the Von Erich family, and was it Fritz you met first? And how did you get integrated with World Class Championship Wrestling back then?
Well, actually, I met a lot of the guys even before I got into the business. I was playing music around the Dallas area, and some of the guys had come around where I was, and just kind of gradually got to know them. In fact, that's how I ended up in it. Bruiser Brody was a big part of that. They just kind of like throwing a guy into the water and telling him to swim, that kind of deal. That people asked me how I was trained. I really wasn't. I was just told to get in there and start doing it. And talking to them, that some of the guys thought I'd be good at it, and because I'd kind of had a clue, and I was a fan from very early age, and it just worked out. It was one of those things that kind of felt natural to me. So
you started as a wrestler?
No, I started refereeing.
You started refereeing right about. Yeah. Did you wrestle at all?
Only when I was forced to.
Okay.
There were a couple of occasions when I did
part of a storyline. Part of a storyline, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the integration with the Von Erichs. I mean, tell us a little bit how you did that after Brody helped you get in.
Well, it kind of came natural. You're working with all the guys in world class, and then they kind of pull you in, and normally, I mean, you're gonna be around the Von Erich boys when that happens, and I hit it off with them. I got along with them just fine. I really didn't get to know David that well. He was gone, before I really got involved. But especially Kerry and Kevin, I knew very well, and we just got to be, good friends. Kerry was a special friend. I traveled with Kevin a lot, during over a period of time, and just guys you got along with,
When did the popularity? I mean, because they were treated like rock stars. I mean, it was like when you went to the Sportatorium, it was kind of like it was like fans going to see the Beatles.
It was very much like that. Yeah, the fans in this area and I guess whatever areas the world class covered, the Von Erich boys were a lot like the regular major athletes, pro athletes that were in the area, the Cowboys and the Texas Rangers, whoever, and that's how they were treated. They were on that same level. For sure, they were rock stars.
Now, did the Christmas show, the big angle that took place with Freebirds, and tell us about, because that was didn't that kind of take it to a new level once that feud started with the Von Erichs and the Freebirds? And
yeah, absolutely, yeah, that was one of those things that just was magical, really. Perfect combination. The Freebirds actually came into Dallas as baby faces, and they were very well received, and that really is what set up the whole thing. And then of course in that cage match with Kerry and Rick and Michael was a referee, and he tried to help Kerry win. Kerry didn't want to take his help, and that turned into one of those deals where they turned on him, and it was history after that, man. It was hot and heavy.
How was that run? I mean, that lasted for a long time, and that was the hottest feud in pro wrestling at that time.
For sure. Yeah, it lasted really, I guess, until it carried on about 2 or 3 years, really hot, and then it cooled off a little bit. Of course, Kerry's injury when he had the wreck and lost his foot, and Of course, David, of course, first thing that happened was David passing away, and then Kerry did the accident, and he was out of commission for a while, and Kevin, he had a period of time there where I know it affected him, mentally. It just had to, and it lost a little bit of its luster for a little while, and then it came back for a little bit. They had a couple of incarnations of it, over the years, but it was a special feud for sure, especially in this part of the country.
Yeah. I mean, Kerry, he had, the matinee idol looks like the other boys in the family did, but Kerry in particular, he just looked like a matinee idol, and he just looked like somebody that should have been a world champion for many years, not only with his talent in the ring, but his charisma and everything about him was just kind of, this guy is elite, and he is, but he had the personal problems. You think that kind of prevented long runs for him being champion?
Oh, no doubt about it. Yeah, no doubt about that. But yeah, his charisma was totally natural. Kerry knew he had that. He could feel it. It's obvious, but it was almost like he was oblivious to it sometimes. It was just such a natural thing for him. He was such a sweet guy. He'd be really hard not to like, but he had more charisma than anybody I've ever been in the ring with. Period. Anybody. Yeah.
There's always a lot of people talking about, of course, he had that accident and he lost, I guess, part of his foot. Is that
right?
And there was a lot of people that, because he never wanted to disclose that to the fans. He always kept that secret. And a lot of people felt that if he would have just come out at that time and say, this is what happened to me, that he might have been over even more if fans knew about the challenges that he had to experience, about going back into the ring after an injury like that. So I'm sure there was a lot of speculation about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people, a lot of us actually believe that should have been the case. But, when it first happened, he didn't actually lose his foot. They put it back together basically. And it was kind of I guess they fused them somehow, fused that joint, and he tried to come back a little too early and put too much stress on it, and that's when they had to take it off, and that's when Kerry started having some issues with taking some painkillers and that sort of thing, and there was some sentiment that it would have been a lot better for him to just come forward and be honest about it, and probably would have made him even a bigger hero.
Yeah.
But Fritz didn't really want that to happen. That's my understanding. And I guess maybe being too protective in some ways. Maybe he thought that would be a bad mark on the family name or whatever. But I think in looking back on it, I think it would have been a wise choice to go ahead and face up to it and come out and just say, hey, look, this is my problem. This is what happened. And I think it would have made him even a bigger hero in the end.
With the success of the Von Erich family, the legacy, the highs, the lows, it just seemed that they had everything, and then one thing after the other. Can you kind of, you were involved with the promotion, knew the family well. Take us kind of along the ascent of how popular things got, and then as you slowly witnessed the things that were starting to affect the family, the promotion, and the eventual kind of demise of the popularity of the territory.
Well, the popularity of those guys was just out in the atmosphere somewhere. They were rock stars. They were on the same level as the major professional wrestling or professional athletes of the area, the Dallas Cowboys, whoever. They were on that same level. That's how they were treated by the fans and by the media. They were just really so over. It was unbelievable. It's hard to imagine really when you look back on it now that anybody could be that over, but they were. And, of course, David's death kind of put I guess a damper on things, and then of course Kerry had the accident which affected his foot, and one thing after another really kind of started chipping away at that I guess that status and that popularity. It was really kind of a sad downturn, the way it all happened.
I'd like you to talk to us about Kerry and what your relationship was, your fondest memories of Kerry Von Erich as we remember him 30 years later.
Oh wow, Kerry was such a sweet guy. I mean, that's the thing I think about when I think about Kerry is just what a nice person he was. I mean, he was friendly to everyone. He was not one of those guys that was aloof at all. I mean, he knew he was a big star. He knew he had all this adoration and fan, the fans following him and everything. But he was just kind of almost oblivious to it sometimes. He was just so nice, and that's the thing that stood out about Kerry to me. I mean, how just what a sweet person he was. And he was fun loving. I mean, he was like a little kid sometimes. He liked to joke around. He liked to kind of goof around with things, and he'd pull little pranks and stuff and amuse himself with it. But it was always just in fun. He was just a fun loving guy. He really was. He's just a super individual.
Yeah. And do you think, the downward spiral as far as really starting was when he left the WWF in 1992? And did you guys sense at that time that there were some problems that perhaps he couldn't overcome?
Well, it was kind of funny because when he first left, all that happened, and he left WWF. He came back to Dallas and worked with Global, and he seemed to be very happy and very involved. And of course, that didn't do away with the issues that he had. I mean, there were some issues with the prescription drugs, and he had some personal issues that just weren't working out for him. And I think he let those things become just too big for him. And you could tell they were on his mind. And the last time I saw him, I worked with him just before, it was on a Friday night, just before I left to go to Japan. And we talked a little bit, and I told him that night, I said, everything's going to work out. I mean, I knew there were some things coming up that he was going to have to deal with, and I tried to encourage him a little bit, and he seemed okay, but you could tell that things were bothering him. And of course, we go on the tour, and we're about halfway through it, and I got the phone call about what happened, and that was tough. That was really tough.
You were in Japan?
Yes.
And how did you find out? Who called you? Was it somebody from the family or somebody else in the business?
Somebody else in the business. Yeah, they called and let us know. And I had to kind of let the word out to the guys on tour. There were 2 or 3 guys from the Dallas promotion there: Manny Fernandez, Alex Porto. I can't remember now. There might have been a couple others that they were on that tour with me, and it was pretty much a downer. That made things rough, and of course we were in the middle of the tour, so we couldn't even get back to go to the service. So it was more depressing for that. But
yeah,
it was tough to hear those things. Kerry was just such a special guy, and then to find that way out of the troubles it's sad. It's sad.
Are you still in touch with Kevin at all?
I talk to Kevin occasionally. Yeah. Of course, he's living in Hawaii, so he's got the life over there, the compound almost, I guess, with all the family and everything. Yeah.
He seems really happy. I mean, when we interviewed him for this show, he just seemed. Yeah, Kevin seemed very at peace, and he spoke freely about everything, and he just it was just great to have him on. But what I'm going to do now, I'm going to bring our producer on, because we had our conversation with Kevin, and the conversation turned to a very famous band that Marsh, can you join us? Marsh.
James, was your brother in ZZ Top?
Not my brother, no, he's like a cousin. Yeah.
Hey John, let me say something just real quick. When you talk to James Beard, I went to the WWE for the wrap party in the 2009 Hall of Fame, and James James Beard, I mean I can't remember his first name, but Beard, the other guy for ZZ Top, was there at the party, and I went to tell him how big he was to my brothers and me when we started the whole Von Erich thing. Was all over that Rio Grande Mud album, with the Tres Hombres, all these stories of Texas and all. We really were captivated by all that. And I wanted to tell him all that, but it was when that movie, The Wrestler, came out, and Flair grabbed me, and we're talking to this actor that did it. Can't remember his name. But, Mickey. Mickey.
Mickey Rourke,
Mickey Rourke. And so we didn't get a chance to talk to him. I felt so bad about it. While you talk to James, tell him how much I wanted to pass on to his brother, how important he was to us, and just pat him on the back. I meant to get over there and could not do it, man.
Yeah.
Too bad.
Yeah, they actually recorded their first 3 albums right here in Tyler, in my hometown, at Robin Hood Bryan's studio. And they played around here a lot early on. They were just kind of one of the bands around, So, they had some humble beginnings, but they sure got there.
That's cool.
Yeah,
It's a great story.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know the Von Erichs use their music a lot, in the intros and that kind of thing. So, there's a connection for sure.
Well, we really want to thank you for your time today. I mean, this has been a pleasure for me to talk to you, and I know your book has been out for a while, but I want to give it a plug. It's called The Third Man: My Life and Times Inside the Ring and Out, and it came out several years ago, but a lot of people have said a lot of good things about it. I have not read it, but just the fact that you had a book out and you had these amazing memories of not just the Von Erichs. I mean, JBL and Gino Hernandez and Chris Adams and all the others that you had the opportunity to work with. What an amazing career and what an amazing time that was in those glory days.
Absolutely. I was really blessed to know all those guys and to work with them. Actually, that book is really more about my relationships and my experiences with those guys than it is about me. It's pretty much what it is. There's quite a bit about the Von Erichs in there.
Well, it's available at Amazon or wherever you get your books. And James, this has been a pleasure, and I want to thank you, especially 30 years later with the loss of Kerry, to be able to talk to yourself, and then, of course, with Kevin. It really kind of painted a picture that that his memory lives on, and people will always love him and the Von Erichs.
Absolutely. You can't recreate that, man. It was a special time, and those were special guys, and it's something that I'll carry with me from now on. Yes.
James Beard, want to thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
James Beard, we were happy to have James on, and I had met James at the Cauliflower Alley reunion, and it was great for him to hear the stories, and you could just tell the love that he had for that family.
Yeah, absolutely. And even like he had mentioned in his book, like his book is about his stories with relationships in the Von Erichs, I mean, I have a hard time saying it, but for no minor reason, they're a big part of that book because he was close to them. He jumped at the idea to talk about them.
Yeah, he did. And we want to thank him again. And then, of course, then as we then I go to my niece's 3rd birthday party, and then head to New York City for the return of the Pro Wrestling Spotlight on WEVD.
So you were at the birthday party between the two?
Yes. And here's the thing. The birthday party was out in Mastic, Long Island. You don't know where Mastic is, I don't believe, or you might. It's out towards the eastern part of Long Island, and I broadcast and lived in Babylon. So traveling another 30 miles east for the birthday party, and then I had to go all the way to New York City. So it was a busy day for me. It was a long one.
Okay. All right. So your frustration at certain points is just possibly because the day's been long.
Yes, long day, and then getting to EVD. Hope things go swimmingly, and then we're excited to be back. And I'll let you take it from here, and let's talk about that evening show.
I was surprised at the amount of audio issues you guys had. The weird, tinny, echoey sounds on the callers. Like, you had a real tough time getting Dawn on, which we'll get to, because I do want to start with the opening of the show, which I think was also with an issue in the very beginning.
Yeah.
But it's also funny because when Cactus comes on later on, you had kind of a different tone about your niece as well. And this one, you're just like, oh, my niece out, here. And the replay of it, basically, Cactus comes on, you wish him, and then you want to wish your little sweetie pie a happy birthday. And I was like, oh, he's feeling a lot more sentimental now. That explains it.
Yeah. My niece is now, she was born in 1990. So she was 3 at this time. And now she's a woman with a couple of kids and a husband and a good life out in Colorado. That's where she lives, Gabrielle.
She missed her opportunity with Cactus Dewey, but I'm sure she's still very happy.
What's really cool? And I have this videotape, and it was Memorial Day, and I believe it actually was probably 93 or 94. And Cactus, Mick comes over to the house that I was living at the time. We're having an outdoor cookout in the back, and my niece Gabby is there, and Dewey's there. And this is definitely a few years later because Noelle was even born. And all Mick did was play with the kids in the backyard on the grass. They were wrestling them. They were rolling around with them. And his son Dewey, Cactus Dewey, as I called him back then, and Gabby were having a great time. They were riding this little electronic car together, and I captured it all on videotape, and it's probably the most heartwarming stuff you'd want to see. I mean, this big Cactus Jack, this guy who's a tremendous, world class wrestler, and his kids, and at the barbecue, and with my niece, and it's a memory that I'm glad I have on videotape, and it was really cool. It was really cool.
It is awesome. It's awesome. Well, EVD did start a little somber as well. You actually played some of the news clips that were going around, and so I did want to play that because you get a real good understanding of how important Kerry and the Von Erichs are to that location, because you hear it in the voice of the newscaster who's tasked with reporting this, and she's broken up about it. And so,
I mean, and the thing is like, it's a welcome. It's a home. It was supposed to be a homecoming, and I had to start the show off, the first show back at EVD, in this manner, and I couldn't do it any other way.
Opinions expressed by guests of the following program do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of the producers, sponsors, and host of the Pro Wrestling Spotlight, nor the staff and management of WEVD.
Less than 48 hours ago, we got the word of another tragic death in professional wrestling from an official down in Dallas, Texas.
Okay, Kerry Atkinson, 33, was found dead about 2:50 p.m. by his father. And this was Thursday, February 18th. Kerry was the third son to die, apparently, of suicide since 1987. And his death leaves one brother out of 6 alive since a string of tragedies began in 1959. Okay, the father found the son's body in a blackberry vine thicket on the family's 140-acre ranch in the Shady Shores community of Denton County. He had a single gunshot wound to the chest from a .44 caliber Magnum handgun. Okay, he was scheduled to compete tonight against the wrestler billed as the Angel of Death at the Dallas Sportatorium. Okay. And Dallas Criminal District Judge Larry Baraka signed an arrest warrant this week after Kerry was indicted on a charge of cocaine.
We'll have all the information for you regarding the tragic death of Kerry Von Erich today on the program.
And now, Eastside Wrestling presents John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight. Brought to you by Holbrook Paint Industries. 1851 Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn. Your one-stop center for all your home and commercial painting needs. Here's your host, John Arezzi.
Well, how you doing, wrestling fans? I am very, very happy to be back here broadcasting on New York's Greater 1050 WEVD. Our last broadcast on this radio station was September 19th of last year. Since then, we've been broadcasting on WNYG in Babylon, New York, and I can't tell you how excited I am to be back. Unfortunately, we lead off the program today on the Pro Wrestling Spotlight with the tragic news about the suicide of Kerry Von Erich. A lot of you WWF fans know him as the Texas Tornado. He's the former NWA World Champion. And we will be talking in detail about that suicide tonight. We have a number of special guests lined up for you on our return broadcast right here on WEVD. We're very excited to be back.
Yeah, I was excited. And that was eerie to hear that open the way that was. It sounded like there were even some music sound, some type of sound effects. It sounded very eerie.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was you guys playing it underneath or if the news that you pulled from had it, but that was really eerie.
Yeah, it was almost Twilight Zone-esque in a little bit. I mean, I don't know if we had anything to do to that. I don't think I had the time to do any pre-production on that clip, but it started off very eerily.
And I mean, as far as the production went, you could already hear there's a difference in the production and the way you're getting introduced, the music, the disclaimer in the beginning. It's also in the end, which I don't have a clip of, but the same disclaimer, the previous opinions.
Right. Yeah, they had to do that because of, the controversial nature of the program. They wanted no liability whatsoever with anything that came out of my mouth on this show.
Well, that's fair because you're going to have Paul on the show, and it's nice to have those disclaimers.
Yeah, exactly.
So because it's DVD, we were expecting a smoother show, a nice operation here. But this is you trying to get Don Liable on for the inaugural return news capsule.
We have our ace correspondent, our special reporter, Don Liable from upstate New York, who gives us a news capsule each and every week. We're going to continue that tradition here at EVD as we did before we left the airwaves here. And why don't we bring on Donnie right now? Donnie, are you with us?
Good evening, John.
How you doing? Donnie, you there? Donnie, do I have to punch him up?
John.
Yes, Donnie, you there? Having a problem hearing him. Why don't we do this? I don't know. Well, I tell you what we'll do. We will be waiting for Donnie. This is a little bit of a technical difficulty. This is our first week back here, so we just have to get back into the swing of things here. I don't know. Why don't we do this? Why don't we go to our first commercial break, and we will be talking to Don. I want to tell you about our sponsor now. Everybody out there, just this company who I'm about to mention, they are responsible for bringing us back to this radio station. One of our sponsors, our only sponsor tonight, and the folks over at Holbro Paint in Brooklyn are responsible for bringing us back right here on WEVD. And we want to tell you about them right now before we even go to Donnie Liable.
I like the save. The save of it where it's all like, I want to tell you about our ad. Wait, before we get to Donnie even. And you're like, no, it's not that you.
Yeah, it was a clusterfuck. The first 5 minutes were definitely a clusterfuck. And, because you're paying premium for every minute that you're broadcasting and you want it to run smoothly. I had Bruce Jacobs with me, who was helping produce, and the engineer was assigned by WEVD. So I guess it just took a while to get the kinks out and get it all done. But that's very frustrating to hear back, and your skin just starts to crawl a little bit, and you get that frustration, and you want to make a good first impression.
Yes. But
it was a mess. Look what happened. It was a mess.
John, you do eventually get Don Liable on, and he says third time's a charm. There's an ad I wanted to ask you about, because I've been wanting to ask you about it for a couple of weeks now, because you had started doing this pay per minute phone line.
Mm-hmm.
It was $1.49 a minute.
Yeah.
I was just curious. This was clearly pre-recorded, right? You'd call in and hear pre-record of you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'd tape a new report every day for the 900 number.
Yeah. How long would you make it?
How long with the segments?
Yeah.
Typically under 5 minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I was always wondering. I was just kind of wondering, like, you're getting them for $1.49 a minute, but you knew how many minutes you were recording for. I was like, how long were you dragging them along for? Just
Oh yeah, that was always the idea, is to try to put as much in there and keep. But you know, the average was about 5 minutes, and the 900 numbers were the rage in 1993. Everyone was doing them.
Mean Gene, JR, they all had them.
Everybody had them.
Yeah. We do eventually get to the news capsule, which is almost identical to the first one, except the audio is way worse.
Yeah. So no need to give me more misery.
Yeah, it was like he was in a tin can. I was like, what's going on? At one point, you explained what the noise is, but I didn't catch it. You say it briefly, like reverb or something.
Maybe it was unidentified flying objects that were interfering that the U.S. had to shoot down back then.
Yeah. What's also funny about it is when you finally get Don on, you go, I don't know, Bruce, I'm just going to push this button here and see what happens. And then he comes in clear.
And so
I'm like, how
had the magic touch.
Yeah. You just had some button in front of you. It's like, I'm just going to click this. And it's just, to me, weird because, like, I mean, you were gone for a while, but, like, it's not like all their equipment changed, did it?
I don't think so.
Yeah. You guys just
not
forgot,
at all.
I guess.
Yeah.
So, you do bring on Meltzer, but right before you bring on Meltzer, you have Heyman come on and explain why Heyman is there, but why he's going to kind of not be there, right? Because you've been advertising him.
Yeah, I've been heavy. He was supposed to co-host the first show with me. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is Heyman's introduction and explanation.
Okay, listen, Donnie, thank you for the report. We'll talk to you next week.
Good show, John.
Okay, thanks. All righty, Don Liable, and we're here with Paulie Dangerously, and Paulie, I want to welcome you to the program and welcome you to the studios of WEVD.
Well, thank you very much. Congratulations for being back on the air.
Well, it's certainly a sad situation that our first broadcast back, Kerry Von Erich, of course, the unfortunate suicide that took place a couple of days ago. We're going to get into that in a little bit, and I don't know how comfortable you feel.
Yeah, this is what we discussed before. I originally yesterday called up John, and we kind of decided it would be appropriate for me to bail out of this show tonight, and the reason is because when you have such a tragedy as this, it would not be in the best of taste to come on the air tonight and start discussing, well, I was fired, and this is wrong, and we have pending litigation, especially coming up this week with papers being served, and, in the interest of good taste, and because, this is especially with this is John's first show. We both agreed. I wanted to come down here tonight to show everybody John did not negate on a promise. John promised the fans that I'd be on. I'm here. I did not decide just not to show up. I showed up, and John lived up to his promise. But in the light of what happened with Kerry Von Erich, it's really not in the best of taste to come on the air tonight and tell you my problems, considering this incredible tragedy that's happened in Texas. So just wanted to let everybody know that I am here. John did live up to his promise, but in the light of the circumstances, we're going to do this another time when it's more appropriate. So, John, go on with your show. The best of luck to you, and I'm sorry that your first show has to fall under these circumstances.
Well, Paulie, you're certainly a gentleman for even coming down here and living up to the promise that we'd made to the fans. You made the promise to me. I made the promise to the fans, and I know you're going to be out of town next week, I believe. But maybe we could bring you back here when you get back up to New York, and we can talk about the situation that's developed between you and your former employees, World Championship Wrestling and the Turner Organization, because I'm sure you have a lot to say about it.
Consider it done.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
That was odd, too, because he stayed. He didn't go. He didn't leave the studio. He stayed. So when he said he was bailing out, I was under the impression that he was going to leave and just say, all right, that's it. But he stayed. But he didn't say anything until I was done with Meltzer and even, I believe, Cactus.
Yep.
And then he came on. Yeah, and then he came on and, calls and other Paulie stuff. But that was really bizarre.
It was weird. So was he sitting right next to you the whole show?
Yes.
I thought, given just listening to it, I thought he left and came back. I thought he just like went away for a while and then realized you were still on and was like, you know what? I'm still here. Like, I'm just going to pop back in, because the way you kind of invite him back on the show was almost as though he hadn't been there.
Well, I was expecting him to leave, and then he stayed. So, you know, that was certainly a bizarre situation.
So I'm guessing that during one of the ad breaks, you're just like, after this ad break, I'm just going to bring you back on. And he's like, okay, probably how it went.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was weird. And I thought it was also just interesting because different tone for a Paul, right? He was like,
yes, very much so.
Yeah,
he wasn't the sarcastic, you know, making fun of me, cutting jokes, disparaging remarks. He was just kind of Paul Heyman.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he gets to that, but in this moment, yes.
Yeah, he was subdued. He was very respectful.
Yeah. I didn't pull any clips from the Meltzer stuff because it was all
rehash.
It was all rehash. Exactly. But I did find it very notable because the first thing you do is tell everybody about his newsletter. This is Dave Meltzer. He's the New York Times of
right.
Thinking about it too, this is your first show back. You had Paul Heyman, Cactus Jack, Don Leibel, obviously, and Meltzer all on here, and you were really putting them all over. This really felt like a coming out party. Like you wanted to reintroduce everyone to, hey, this is serious business.
Yeah, it was kind of loaded. I mean, it was just a big newsworthy show. It was a newsworthy day for returning to WEVD, and my two favorite guests in the history of the show were always Cactus and Paul E. So, what more than a fitting way than to have them both on the return to EVD?
Oh yeah, for sure. The Meltzer thing is worth listening to if you have the Patreon. But yeah, like you said, it was all rehash. Notable thing I thought was really cool. He goes, if you asked him 10 years ago who would have been the biggest star in the business in 10 years, he's like, Kerry would have been the obvious answer because you would have thought Hogan and Flair would have been done by now. And I was like, that's notable for a couple reasons. And Meltzer had mentioned that at this point he was starting to feel numb to all these kinds of announcements. They just kept coming in, and I'm sure it hasn't gone away, you know?
Yeah, it's still, I mean, look, even today, it hits you hard. I mean, we lost three big names in the wrestling business in the last few weeks. From Jay Briscoe, Lanny Poffo, and then this week, Jerry Jarrett passing away. Yeah. And Jerry was 80 something, but Lanny certainly, at 68, that was tragic. And of course, what happened with Jay was just devastating.
Yeah, 38.
So yeah, it hits you hard.
Yeah. Those three specifically were pretty hard too. And Dave did speculate too on realistically how long would Kerry have lasted in prison if he knew he was going to be going to there. That was an interesting thought process as well. But you go from that. You have some ads and stuff. You bring on Cactus. You call him back like you'd said to call him back. And that was also kind of rehashed. And you almost started the same. Let's say happy birthday, and then tell me about your Paul Orndorff match. It was really that.
Yeah, that's the thing that was interesting, was the fact that you have a morning show and then you have a night show. And I always wanted to keep the NYG show as kind of a backup plan in case something goes awry at EVD. But right now, we were safe because of the sponsor, Holbrook Paints from Brooklyn, and they were spending, I believe, the amount that they were spending with us weekly back then was $800 a week, and it cost a little over $1,000 a week to be on EVD. So they were able to pay the bulk, and then other sponsors came in and all of that. But they were able to put us back on the air, and so we'll see how long the run is with Holbrook Paints, and before I go back into financial distress with the show. But it was just great to be back with that big signal, that 50,000 watt clear channel signal.
Yes. You even have one of your callers. I didn't pull his clip, but the caller who used to park on the hill calls in. Just tells you how happy he is.
Pete from Eatontown, New Jersey.
Yes. Yeah, he calls in. By this point, with Holborough, I'm gonna pronounce it wrong forever. With the paint company and your other sponsors, were you actually making money on the show yet, or was it still costing money?
It was about to turn around where there was some money being made, but also around this time, there were more reasons than not to try to get back on EVD, because I knew I was planning another convention. And I also knew it was in the infancy of the discussions with myself and an agent to form International Wrestling All-Stars and begin pitching our first overseas tour. And at the same time, opening up discussions with AAA, Ron Scholar, Conan, Antonio Pena about bringing that AAA promotion into the United States. So there was a lot of cool stuff on the horizon. So getting on now to be able to make sure that you have that big audience and you could build it, and then other sponsors follow, and we begin making some money with the show, which was great.
That's awesome. That's cool. Let's see. So when you do bring Paul Heyman back on, you say that he's been circling the building in a limo, and he just and he kind of starts laughing and says, "Who's going to pay that?" He goes, "I hope you guys are going to pay it," because he keeps saying over and over again, "I don't have a job. I've been fired. I don't have a job."
Yeah.
So the callers all razz him. Everyone offering him jobs at McDonald's and stuff. And then he said he was been applying for all sorts of jobs, including at the station. And then you say, "Well, they don't pay you. You have to pay them." He goes, "That's what I found out." And I was like, "That's not how this is supposed to work."
And that's the truth. They were a brokered station.
Yeah. And so there's a point, I believe, in one of our clips where you hear Paul just say to you, "You're paying." Let's see. And we start getting some callers in. And I believe our first caller here is Mike. The back and forth between Paul and Mike is great.
And you know who that is, right?
This is Mike from College Point, Mike Johnson.
Mike Johnson, yes.
Yeah. Yes.
But he's got his start. He got it, he got his start by loving hearing about inside wrestling talk, and he was just fascinated that there was a show to cover that, and it got him deeper involved in the business and wanting to learn more about it. And this guy's had a career that's been phenomenal. What a great guy.
Oh, yeah. I've heard nothing but good things about him from everyone. Any interaction I've ever had with him has been pleasant. But it's just kind of funny because I kept the call after him as well.
Okay.
Because someone makes a comment about PWI, and because of last week, I think your trigger finger was a little hot. So let's take
a second. Hold on. Wait a second. Before we get to that, I'm going to do a surprise here.
Okay.
Is this who I think it is?
Yes, it is.
Can you hear Donnie Leibel?
Donnie, are you there?
Donnie, are you there?
Yes.
How you doing, Donnie? I'm taping the podcast right now, and
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I mean, it's good. It's great because I just plugged the fact that you're going to be joining us on a semi-regular basis, and look at this. He calls me right in the middle of the show, and I get to say, "Donnie, are you there?"
Is that timing or what? I'll tell you.
Yeah. Classic.
Well, I hope you have a good taping, and I just wanted to see how was your conversation with Kevin Von Erich?
Oh, it was great, and we were just talking about that. The fact that we didn't play the interview yet. We're going to be getting to that in just a little bit. However, those little anecdotes that you gave me really made him happy, and I don't want to spoil it, but the things that you had mentioned to me, and I relayed to him, his eyes lit up on a couple of those points, and it was wonderful. And listen, my friend, I will speak to you in the next day or so, and then we look forward to bringing you on next week when we have that Ultimate Warrior interview, and so we could review the capsule from years ago, and bring our dear friend back on a semi-regular basis here at the show.
Dust me off. I'm coming back. All right. Thanks, John.
All right, my friend. Talk to you soon.
He wished you a good show and everything, man. You guys are just still in tune.
30 years later.
Yeah.
But anyway, we were talking about the Mike Johnson call and something afterwards, and
yeah, let's go to it.
I had to take that call.
When Donnie Leibel calls, you pick up. For 30 years, you've done it. There's no reason to stop now.
I'm just texting him now. So, yeah, all right, let's go to the clip.
Let's go to the clip.
We're going to go. Should I punch? I'll do it?
You do it.
Okay.
That's what you're paying for.
Mike from College Point.
That's why
Can you hear us?
Big bucks.
Hello? Mike from College Point?
Yeah, John. How's it going?
How are you?
Pretty good. Welcome back.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. And you're one of our loyal supporters and listeners here, and we're happy to be back, believe me.
Absolutely. Nice to hear from Uncle Cactus, especially with the Andrew Goldberger joke.
Yes?
How are you doing, Mr. Dangerously, sir?
I'm out of work. How are you doing?
Pretty good. I'm in college.
Good for you. It's a smart thing to do. Always have something to fall back on. Take it from me.
Good to hear. So how do you feel about Jim Cornette being the premier manager in wrestling once again?
I don't know. How do you feel about it?
I think it's great. I think he's the best.
Good for you. I'm glad that you have that opinion. So then you'll watch WCW and you'll be happy with yourself.
Well, he's not in WCW. He's in Smoky Mountain.
And watch Smoky Mountain. What do I care?
I don't know. What do you care, sir?
What do I care? What do I care about, or what do I care?
What do you care about, sir?
What do I care about, sir? Well, I care about my life. I care about my livelihood. I care about New York City. I care about my friends, and I care about my family. What do you care about?
Money.
Money?
That's it.
There you go. Typical New Yorker.
Mike, thanks for the call.
Keep it in the ring.
Let's keep it in the ring.
Good. We're here with Rich Mancuso, ladies and gentlemen.
Holy
He couldn't be
smokes.
on another station, so he comes on ours.
Okay.
Or his. Ain't mine. I can't afford to be on this station right now.
5610
I have no income.
is the number to
I'm out of
call.
work.
Let's go to New Jersey. Joey from Lafayette, New Jersey. Joey, you're next.
Hi, John.
Hi.
I don't know if you get Pro Wrestling Illustrated Weekly.
Yes, I do.
Okay, did you get the headline for March 1st?
No, I did not. And I don't even think I want to hear it, to tell you the truth. I felt there was a punchline coming in that maybe might have been a little tasteless
So you
for.
kind of punched him off the
I
air.
punched him right off.
You're
477-5610.
the Mike Tyson of punching people off
Well,
the air.
thank you very much.
Well,
Well, coming from a man of your stature.
Let's say, with my stature, I'm unemployed. What stature do I have? The number one unemployed manager in the wrestling business today.
Hey, you know what? You never know what's going to happen in the future.
I certainly don't.
You are New York,
If
you know?
I did, I wouldn't have signed that contract.
You are New York,
Well,
and you should be affiliated with some sort of endeavor here in New York, promoting not only Paulie Dangerously, but professional wrestling as well.
Well, thank you. I seem to think so. Other people don't, but I seem to think so.
Well,
let's call you Riddick Bowe, because, if you were the Tyson of punch, you'd be in jail,
That's true. Don't want to go to jail. Don't want to get sued or anything.
At least they get 3 square meals
Just want
a day.
to stay on the air and do my thing.
Hilarity, man.
Yeah, I mean, after that last one that got you even 30 years later, I feel like this one, someone sets you up and you're like, no, I don't want to know where it's going.
Yeah, there might have been some inside talk going back and forth with Paul and I that you should be affiliated with a promotion or something. He might have started telling me about some plans that he was thinking of to start something up. Something was brewing. Yeah.
You think he was already in the works with something at that point?
Yeah, I mean, was that the Global? Was he getting affiliated with Crockett at that time? And then he went over to ECW with Todd Gordon. So that might have been the time period where there was a lot of speculation about him and Crockett doing this Global thing. I'm not 100% sure. It was 30 years ago. But there was something behind that conversation that I was having with them on the air.
Yeah, for sure. And then that caller.
Yeah, I had to cut him off because I knew when he said, "Did you read the headline on the March thing?" There was something coming where it was going to be. I didn't want any part of it. Let's put it that way. I had an intuition about what was going to come next.
I just like hot finger John. Just no, I don't click.
Yeah, I was very quick on the trigger back then.
Well, especially because they got you the week before. You weren't having it again.
Right.
I do want to play the clip that Mike had mentioned about Uncle Cactus bringing up Adam Goldberger because it's like a 30-second clip.
Oh, Andrew Goldberger. Yeah.
Andrew Goldberger. Yeah, and then you could maybe tell me, enlighten me a little bit on why you responded this way.
Well, we're certainly proud of you as well up here in New York, and the fans that have been following you for your career from up here and all over the States. Just wish you the best of luck tomorrow. I appreciate you coming on the air with us tonight, and in a few weeks we'd like to bring you on for the whole hour and take some calls from some of the people.
Sure, John, I want to point out one thing that everyone should know. You mentioned that the Wrestling Observer was, in your opinion, the #1 newsletter anywhere. but I think you should point out, being the journalist that you are, that is by default, since Andrew Goldberg is no longer in the newsletter business.
Yeah, he's kind of disappeared, went back into the woodwork. Well, I appreciate you bringing that out, Cactus.
Yeah, well, it's my duty. You got fans out there, and they count on Uncle Cactus to bring them the real scoop.
Yes, they do. And listen, happy birthday to Dewey, and we'll talk to you real soon.
All right, John.
Thanks for coming on with us.
Andrew Goldberger.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be enlightened about him?
Yeah, the name sounds familiar, and I can't place it.
Andrew was a young, and a lot of our listeners know the backstory, but for those who may not, Andrew Goldberger was a 14-year-old kid who was this nerdy kid, and he'd call up the show, and he had to position his antenna and with aluminum foil, and I mean, he was just an odd kid that I took a liking to, and Cactus took a liking to. So there was a time we took the kid out to lunch at the Ground Round out there in Suffolk County on Long Island, and he started a newsletter called Around the Ring, and he was sued by Herb Abrams when he was 14. But more than anything else, he is the guy that introduced me to Vince Russo.
Wow.
He is the guy that called my show, and he said, there's a video store, and there's a guy there that likes wrestling, and he's doing stuff with wrestling, and his name is Vince. And he said, you really should call him up and get an appointment set with him. Maybe he could be a sponsor of yours. And I did, and that's how I met Vince Russo. So that was interesting. But here's the other thing. Andrew started coming to conventions, and Andrew was this inward kid, but a highly intelligent kid. He reached out to me a few years ago when I just started getting back. He said he'd been looking for me for 20 years, almost 30 years, because this was such a long time ago. And he wanted to thank me for paying attention to him and for taking the time out to bring him on the show, to do things with him. He said that I gave him confidence back then. And what he eventually did, he was always a smart kid. I mean, he actually for a while there was a deadhead and was, going around the country as he grew older with the Grateful Dead, going to all their shows. But he was a techie, and he was a techie back then. He was constantly wanting to learn. And he developed an app that was a way for churches to accept donations via an app or something. And he sold it for multiple millions and millions of dollars. So he became a millionaire, and he became a millionaire playboy. He spends his time now between Brazil and I guess Belize. Belize is that the name? There's it's like a country. It could be Spain, right? Belize.
Yeah, it's Spain.
And New York City, where he has a place, and he's also he owns some car washes, and I mean the guy is a multimillionaire. And when he reached out to me, it was via Instagram, and I went to his profile, and there he was. And I got together with him a couple of times, and so nice. He really is. And there was when Ashley Massaro committed suicide, and he was so close to Mick Foley, was so close friends with her, and Mick was raising money to help the family. And Mick knew that I had reestablished connections with Andrew, and I told Mick the story, and he goes, "You think Andrew, you want to help?" And I was like, "Well, here's his number. Why don't you reach out?" And Andrew donated several $1,000s to the family of Ashley Massaro. So interesting stuff. You never know how you're going to affect somebody's life.
Yeah.
And Andrew is always, to this day, just even though he's a big, tall guy now, and this millionaire and all of that, he still has that same Andrew Goldberger way about him that he had all those years ago. And what a great guy!
Wrestling is just so cool in that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sometimes there are good things. Sometimes
the connections between the people, if not turmoil, are just very tight. Otherwise, you know what I mean? It's either there's this horrible relationship, or it's this. Give me a call in 20 years, and I'll help you with whatever you need. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, it's just fantastic, and I love that. I mean, as soon as you said he was 14, I was like, "That's why I know," because I know
That's the kid.
most of the rest. That's the kid, and I love that he brought it up like that too. Because who would have given it a second thought when you're just talking about newsletters? And he goes, "That kid's out there. He was something, So that's really cool.
So special. He made an impression on people.
I hope that he heard that. I hope he was still listening at that point, because that probably would have made him smile to hear Cactus.
Yeah. Andrew would have been, because he really revered Cactus. He really, especially taking the kid to lunch and spending time with him, and just kind of treating him like not just an equal, but just kind of showing him that you're a good kid. You're a good kid, and you're going to do good things in life. And he did.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is so cool. Well, if that wasn't a good enough way to end the show, I got one more clip.
And before we bring Kevin on.
Well, yes, obviously before that too. But I got one more clip, because to me, when you're a sponsor and a company and you ask John Arezzi to read a thing, I don't think you anticipate necessarily that Paul Heyman's going to become such a vocal part of that commercial. And I thought, how lucky for them and how fun for you.
Yes.
So.
All righty, we're going to take a quick break. I want to tell you about Homegrown.
Maybe McDonald's is looking for French fries.
Paul.
Jerk.
Paul, see this company right here that I'm about to talk about?
Yeah.
They are responsible for putting us back on the air.
Yeah.
So
talk about them.
We're going to be very nice to
What's the
them.
name of the company?
Holbrook Paints.
Great company. They paint my car.
Of Brooklyn.
It's my favorite
Their
paint
house
company.
paint. You buy house paint there and ceiling paint. Here's the decorating opportunity you've been waiting for. Now listen to this deal. Now through March the 6th, Holbrook Paints, I should learn to name the sponsor correctly, 1851 Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn. They're holding a sensational winter paint sale featuring Regal Wall Satin, Benjamin Moore's luxurious flat finish for walls and ceilings.
Let me ask you this. I watch on TV late night those infomercials for GLH by Ron Popey. They fill in your bald spot. Could they paint my bald spot?
They can certainly paint your bald spot.
Well, then that's a fine paint company.
Right now you stop in there, and if you mention the Pro Wrestling Spotlight and you buy
throw me right the hell out of the store, won't they?
No, they certainly will not. Hopefully not. Not yet, anyhow. Purchase just 4 gallons of Regal Wall Satin. Mention you heard it on the Pro Wrestling Spotlight.
And they'll charge you double.
You'll receive a limited edition autographed Weekend of Champions poster, the beautiful collector's item personally signed by 10 wrestling superstars: Bruno Sammartino, Larry Zbyszko, Jushin Liger, Killer Kowalski, Captain Lou Albano, Eddie Gilbert, Wendy Richter, Jimmy Valiant, Ivan Koloff, and...
someone else.
Jimmy Valiant, did I say him?
Yeah, Jimmy, he said...
Nikolai Volkov.
Yeah, Volkov,
there
you said
go.
him too.
And it's
That's
valued at
only $9.
$75. It's yours free with the purchase. A very limited supply available. They've been in business 50 years. Don't grapple with the decision on where to shop. Visit
That's
Holbrook.
a good one. Don't grapple. Get it to wrestling show.
Visit
Don't grapple.
Holbrook Paint,
I get
1851 Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn.
What's the name of the store?
Holbrook Paint.
Good store.
1851 Flatbush Avenue, Brooklyn. Call them 718-338-7800 and mention the Pro Wrestling Spotlight. You'll receive that beautiful Weekend of Champions autograph poster absolutely free when you buy 4 gallons of paint. And go in there, because they're responsible for bringing us back.
So if they go out of business, it's over for you too.
Exactly.
So you better keep
Next
them in
week, some of our old sponsors will be joining us, like LNS Comics, and they've been with us since 1989. We'll talk about them next week. Well, let's go back to the phones.
I won't be here next week. Why don't we talk about them now?
LNS Comics, one of our favorite people in the world. They've been with us for 4 years.
Comic. That's about all I got.
Hey, listen, I want to talk to you about one thing first. And 2 weeks from now...
I'm sorry about your sister.
Don't mention my sister on the air.
Okay.
They're listening right now. My whole family's listening.
Hi, sis.
In 2 weeks, okay, if you can make it, we talked about this situation about Farmingdale Lanes out in Long Island. I want to challenge you one-on-one to a bowling match, okay? We have a bowling league that we bowl every Saturday. We're going to talk about it more next week as they join us also here as a sponsor.
Can I get those bumper guards to prevent the ball
Yes,
from
we're going to put bumpers
gutter?
down so you don't get a gutter ball. But in a couple of weeks, maybe 2 weeks, let's say, 2 weeks, you'll be out of town next week, maybe in 2 weeks. Would you accept the challenge to bowl me one-on-one?
I'll accept. Will I accept the challenge in 2 weeks, or will I bowl you in 2 weeks?
Will you bowl me in 2 weeks? So
I'll accept the challenge in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Give me a little time to prepare.
And then we'll mention a date, and we'll bring you down there.
Yeah, but I'm a dangerous bowler.
Okay.
Because to get your strikes, you got to risk those balls.
That's quite true.
And ba-boom, there you go, Paulie.
Paul. There was only 3 callers at all outside of that, though, that had things. Someone was asking if the Brutus Beefcake injuries were real. You brought up Royal Duncan's writing a book about the history of wrestling titles, which I think comes back later on. I think you have them on, it says. And someone asked you straight up, is there any chance of seeing WCW go against WWF? And you went, no, none.
Okay. At the time, absolutely. That was it. No.
Yeah. But yeah, Paul's great.
Yeah, he's always. I don't recall if we ever had that bowling match. I guess we'll find out in future weeks. But I'm thinking that probably not. If he said he was can I accept the challenge in 2 weeks? That was kind of his way of saying, I ain't fucking doing this.
In the morning show, you said you were going to challenge him for a one-on-one, and in the evening show, you did, and you said that, and I was like, did this this might have happened?
I guess we'll
Did he
know.
show up and sign anyways? If he would have,
I don't remember. I guess we'll find out in future weeks, and then we talked a little bit before that about LNS Comics, and I Larry Spitz, who ran LNS with his partner Steve at the time. Larry is going to be coming on the program as well. I communicated with him yesterday, and I believe he comes on the morning edition of this program from 30 years ago next week. And then the evening show features the Ultimate Warrior. So, we'll be working on all kinds of stuff for, bringing Larry on is something, because he's feeling much better. He had some medical issues, but it will be nice to hear his take after all these years, and when we bring him on this program. So that's fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, now I guess the main event of what we were doing, I mean, of course, it's a tribute to Kerry Von Erich, and how this interview came about was J.R. Shulman is a friend of mine, and J.R.'s here in Nashville. He was the person who ran all the country music channels for Sirius XM for many years. He was the guy that programmed the music, and he is from the Dallas area, and he knew the Von Erichs. So he has been working with Kevin and the family, and Kevin is interested in perhaps writing a book, and JR is trying to help them. And when I had lunch with JR last week, I said, wow, this is almost the 30th anniversary of Kerry's passing. Let me ask JR if he could hook me up. And JR said yes. Didn't know if it was going to happen for a long time, until like 48 hours before this thing. And didn't even know until that day, until we interviewed him. Actually, it was like a pins and needles thing. Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? And all I could say is, like, it did happen. And when we had the opportunity to talk to him for, I believe it was close to an hour, it was an amazing conversation.
Fantastic. Yeah, it was once it was all said and done and kind of snipped up a little bit with a couple of EVD style technical difficulties. We ended with about 45 minutes. A solid conversation with him.
Yeah, so this was fascinating. And Marsh, you pulled something out of your hat that really lights him up at the end of the interview too. So without further ado, I mean, let's go to Kevin Von Erich. Welcome back to the Pro Wrestling Spotlight, and I have to tell you, it's an honor for me to be able to say that on this week's show, we were able to contact Kevin Von Erich, who is in Hawaii. And for me, this is such a pleasure, even though I met him in the 70s, 77, actually. It's been fascinating to me to always to follow how big the Von Erichs were in Texas. And the incredible legacy that is the Von Erich family. And it's indeed an honor for me to bring on Kevin Von Erich on this week's podcast. So let's bring Kevin on now. Kevin, how are you?
Doing great. How are you today, John?
Oh, man, I am doing okay. We're here in Tennessee, and it's about 74 degrees here right now. And we got some bad weather coming overnight tonight. So
I heard about that.
That's Tennessee for you. So you're out in Hawaii, where I don't think you get very much of that crazy weather.
Oh, man. Well, this is the rainy season, so we're getting rained about every day. But it's about 74 degrees out there right now, so we're just same as Tennessee. So enjoy it. Aloha.
Yeah, exactly. I tell you, I mean, this is an interesting show for me. I mean, as I discussed with you, we go back 30 years on each one of the Pro Wrestling Spotlight podcasts, and we cover the events that took place that week. And this, of course, is the 30th anniversary of the passing of your brother, Kerry. I don't want to dwell on, tragedy.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's all right. It's not painful for me to talk about, John. It's all right at all. It's just I didn't know it had been 30 years. To me, it seemed like maybe 10, but 30 years, that sounds right. And so how about that? Kerry was a great guy. I mean, thank you for being considerate like that, but I can talk about it. I'm a Christian and raised my family this way. And I'm not afraid of death. I'm not. That's just kind of the difference in a Christian, I suppose, and other people. I'm kind of looking forward to being in heaven, to tell you the truth. But it's not that I want to die. I love life. I love my family. I love my everything. But death is not something scary to me at all. It's like that's a great day, but it's not going to be. But today is the day, and to do your best every day, and that's life. That's what's good and fun. I'm so happy right now. I've never been this way, so peaceful and happy. I've got all my kids, my children around me, grandchildren. I'm telling you, my grandchildren, that's a blessing, man. I mean, that's as good as life gets. If I could pass that along to your listeners, if I could do one positive thing through the suffering I've gone through in my life, let me tell y'all, there is no joy and love like children, love, marriage, and being a man, taking the hard stuff so your family doesn't have to go through it. Yeah, it's hard. Life is hard, but we're men. We do what's hard. We pay the price so the women and children don't have to, and it's a beautiful life like that. That's the joy of life too. It's just like I said on the Dark Side of the Ring video, dinner with children, being home, telling stories with each other. That's the good stuff. The small stuff.
Yeah. And like every day is a blessing, every day is a blessing that you're able to open your eyes and live your life and do your thing and be good to people. I mean, that's kind of what it's all about, and in your legacy in the wrestling business. And of course, my involvement in the business, sometimes it's a bit problematic because of the nature of the business and the people that you have to deal with for business and the individuals. And it's a tough business. And me being in the entertainment business for many years, it's not too dissimilar. But the wrestling business is probably the most unique business that anyone can ever be involved with. But for some strange reason, for people like myself who leave, come back, it's something that draws you back in. I mean, I had a love for it since I was a little boy, and now as I look back at my history in the business and have these types of opportunities to speak to individuals like you, it's a crazy business. We all know that, but you have those like yourself, and you try to overcome the adversity and just kind of live your life and be happy, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, just do your best. Keep it coming. Yeah. Even though no matter what you do, you're going to get tired of it. It's going to be work. Even something fun like wrestling. My brothers and I had fun in the ring. I mean, that's something that I think that went out and people could feel it and be a part of it because we enjoyed what we were doing in the ring. And, we wanted to change wrestling. We wanted to be like a quicker pace, like we did it. But Well, and we did. I think we made a show that was enjoyable, fun to watch, and it's out there with the other shows now. It's like it's all part of they call it the good old days of wrestling. But I really think, John, that I think we got to go back to those days. I really think that's the core base that our fans are just the old days. I mean, you get in the ring, you do your best, and the crowd is with you. I don't think that, there's always, I don't want to jump ahead of us here, but you take the wrestling style like you have in Mexico City with the high spot, bing, 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 all over the place, and I don't think that's where Western wrestling is going to go. I mean, Japan is getting kind of like that, or had gotten like that, but I don't believe that's, I've always thought that I'm sure I'm right about the wrestling business, but I could be wrong, but in mine, I'm sure I'm right. So I'm just, I think wrestling will come back to that one day. I think some of these companies know that too and are working toward that.
Yeah, do you think companies like Tony Khan's AEW, who are doing good in the ratings, they're doing they have more of a legitimate presentation on wrestling in comparison to WWE? And now WWE's been has a tremendous storyline right now with Roman Reigns and the Bloodline, and that's very reminiscent of some really good, compelling week-to-week unfolding of a storyline, which is leading up to WrestleMania and with Cody being back there. But yeah, I mean, hearing what you're saying about the potential, there's always the potential for pro wrestling if you can go back to what people call the good old days, or do compelling storylines, and with AEW, what they're doing with the guys like Bryan Danielson and some of the incredible talent that's in that organization right now. It's interesting to watch the evolution of what's going to be happening in pro wrestling over the next several years.
Yeah. It's the same with football. I mean, athletes get stronger, bigger, faster every year, and so wrestling grows that way too. And I agree with you on that. I love the WWE, but also AEW. I watch AEW and I love the direction they're going. I believe this guy,
Tony Khan.
I believe he's going to be. I believe he's on the right track. I really have a good feeling about that.
Yeah,
I'd like to see my sons there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be kind of cool. I mean, definitely, because I know they have been with MLW, and nothing lasts forever. And MLW has been all over the place a little bit, and not really running consistently. And but with the legacy of the family of the Von Erichs, and to be able to get your boys seen, and I think that's a very compelling storyline in and upon itself, because I've heard nothing but great things about your boys and the potential that they have, and I think AEW would be a fabulous place for them.
Well, I brought them up rough. I knew what it was like in Japan for the young boys, and so I sent them over there. Because if you want to grow a tree strong, you let the wind blow on it. You let the rocks and the dust hit it. I mean, it's the outside forces of nature that grow that tree with strong bark, and that's what I wanted my boys for. I wanted them to be hit rough, and the way I train them is my style. You really can't see that when they're getting jumped going to the ring every week. Like this MLW was like chaotic. Mm-hmm. But when you put them in the ring with solid men that did what I did, you're going to show what they've been trained to do. They've signed their contracts and they're stuck, but their contracts are almost over. I'm really looking forward to it, seeing what the next chapter is going to be like with those guys.
Yeah. Contracts in wrestling, that's another good point of contention. I guess we could talk about for hours, right?
Independent contractor, yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, going back, and I want to get into the legacy of the family and what the Von Erichs meant to pro wrestling, and how the Von Erichs, I mean, were almost in some areas as big as the Beatles in some places. I mean, you guys changed the way fans look at wrestling because of the presentation and because of the matinee idol looks that your brothers had and yourself and the girls that would go crazy in the response of the crowd. I mean, I want to touch upon Kerry for a second. As far as this is the 30th anniversary of his passing, I want you to tell our listeners, some of your fondest memories of your brother, what he meant to you, and anything you could share about that relationship that you had with your brother and what he meant not only to your family but to pro wrestling.
Yeah, I sure can. One thing I'd like people to know about Kerry was that he loved fun. It was all about fun to Kerry, but he also loved people. And my little brother, when he could see someone was suffering, like being embarrassed, you should have seen what a hero he would turn into. There's a story out about young Rock when he was a kid, was at a show in Honolulu. He was on the card coming out from Japan, and his dad had said something to him. He wanted to fight a guy, he was a little guy, embarrassed. Kerry remembered just exactly what that was. And the little guy felt like crap, his dad had really jumped on him in front of all the guys, and Kerry put his arm around him and said, "Hey, little buddy, it's going to be all right." And that guy never forgot it. And Kerry was like that. If he saw someone embarrassed, he would step up. He would not let that go. And it's painful to watch somebody hurt like that. And my brother, Kerry, was the best in the family about that. He could do the self-deprecating humor, or he would have people laugh at him or something to make him feel good, and the way he'd like tell little boys, "Come on, hang in the stomach. You're not big. You can't hurt me." And he'd hit him in the stomach. He'd fall down. "I wasn't ready," or squeeze my hand. "Ow. Hey, I didn't know we were so strong." The way he just made little kids feel great. I love the way he was. What a good man he was, really.
Yeah, I had him at I promoted the very first big wrestling fan conventions that were kind of like so big today. But I promoted, it was called Weekend of Champions. And I brought together, for the first time, Ric Flair with Buddy Rogers, Lou Thesz. And then in 1992, we had a convention, and I brought in Jushin Liger from Japan. I did a reunion with Bruno Sammartino, Larry Zbyszko, and Kerry was at that show. And you have to, all I remember is how big his smile was and how he was nice to everybody.
Yeah,
and
always.
And it was, he just had these matinee idol looks that, he looked like, he looked like a movie star, no matter where he did and how he traveled. And, but that was a big memory for me. And I had him on my radio show a couple of times years ago, but it was such a sad week to cover wrestling when we found out that he passed and the way he passed, and it was just kind of sad. But when you talk about Kerry to people, everyone remembers just, first and foremost, the match with Flair and winning the title in honor of David, and that really started one of the biggest feuds of all time with the Von Erichs and the Freebirds. So that was magical stuff back then.
Yeah, it was great, and I have to say that something about that TV camera when they shine it on you and you come out on the television, you're almost a ghost. When people see you in real life, they scream and they can't believe it's really real, but we're just us. We're just men, and the TV camera does that, you guys. I'm telling you, I'm just like you folks. Don't get carried. Something about these cameras put you on that light box. You just get bigger than life, but you can't let that get into your head, because that's not reality. You're just a guy,
Yeah. And around the time, when he made his debut in the WWF, I was always so kind of like, and I hated the fact that McMahon used to change everybody's name when they came into the territory. And when he came in and then came the Texas Tornado, I was like, this is Kerry Von Erich, this ain't the Texas Tornado. And the fans that didn't watch WWF knew this is Kerry Von Erich. And then was that something, if you could, remember talking to your brother about, why did they change my name? I'm Kerry Von Erich. Did he care that they called him Texas Tornado, or is there any memories you have of that?
Well, I don't really recall how all that went.
Yeah.
But I think he expected to have his name changed. They did that with Tony Atlas went up there, and everyone knew Tony Atlas, but he was Zulu all of a sudden or something like that.
Kurt Hennig was Mr. Perfect, and it was always like, just so he could trademark a name so they can't use it when you're done over there. But I mean, everyone knew who Kerry Von Erich was, but I tell you, getting back to what your family meant, and that night, December 25th, 1982, starting that biggest feud in wrestling history, the heat from that feud with the Freebirds, even though it was the era of kayfabe, all right, it was the era of like, did you ever get concerned, or your brothers get concerned when you were battling the Freebirds or some of the other big heels of the territory that you kind of worried for the safety of your opponents because the fans were, it had to be really interesting for you to watch and say, hope these guys don't get attacked, like the heels.
It was pretty wild, and here's why. Our ratings were going crazy. We were beating the WWE there in New York in their own backyard. It was like, and so it went to our minds, I think, went to our heads. We wanted to get bigger and bigger every week. And I mean, I'm telling you, if you see some of those come as you are matches with those boots, that might, they're in the leather strap matches, we were trying, let's do this. It was like, man, and they were just getting more and more people. And I'm telling you, that was that. With those boots, we would turn the boot around so that leather part hit him in the face. It wouldn't cut him, but it would still make a good red spot. But Michael Hayes was turning that boot around heel first, and he knocked 4 of my teeth out, 2 of Dave's teeth out too. He was like, he's wild with it, because we're in the ring and we're, it's savage in the ring, but you're in the ring with some other guys that know what they're there for. It's only going to be about 20 minutes, so you pour your guts in, or 30 minutes, pour your guts into it, and you'll heal it by, the next show. There's a price to pay, for good TV. And but I'd say Michael went a little too far. When you're watching those boot matches, you watch him swinging the heel of that boot, taking out back molars and stuff like that. Man, it was, and that's great TV now.
Yeah, and the fans certainly didn't want their heroes getting beat up. So I'm sure that, the fanaticism of the fans and how much they revered and adored your family, that had to put some of the heels in jeopardy when they were coming in and out of the ring. I mean, those Texas crowds could be a little rowdy sometimes, Yeah,
oh, man, they sure could. And not like, I'm sure you've seen Puerto Rico. Puerto Rican crowds go wild out there, and that's the same in the Caribbean too. The Trinidad and Tobago were crazy. I think they outlawed wrestling out there after that shooting, didn't they?
I don't recall. But I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, when I started as a young 14-year-old going to Madison Square Garden month after month, and I didn't miss a house show there from August 71 through 77, so I saw a lot. Pedro Morales was the champion at the time when I first started going from Puerto Rico, and I remember the police and because the makeup of the audience was about 70% Puerto Rican, and Pedro was revered. So when a heel started getting over on him, and from Freddie Blassie to George Animal Steel to the others that Morales was in the ring with, you really looked at the makeup of the crowd and you're like, a riot could break out at any moment. And Morales never lost at the Garden, not even on a count out or a DQ or anything.
Really?
They would not allow him to lose there because they were afraid of what the fans would.
Wow. That's great. I didn't know it was that high, but somebody told me, I worked in Madison Square Garden once, but I won my match, and somebody says, hey, you're undefeated in Madison Square Garden. I said, well, I got to better leave it like that then.
Yeah. Well, that's what a mecca of wrestling. I mean, you had the one match at the Garden. I mean, how was that? I mean, to be at that place, which was revered as the mecca of all sports arenas, and it was the place for pro wrestling, and a lot of outside territory guys came in month after month.
Well, yeah, it's just to the wrestlers, it's just another building. It's a dressing room again, and you got another town tomorrow night. It's just, it might be big to the fans and all, but to us, we get in the ring, we've got our match to do. Well, I try to push that stuff out of the way. I don't even see the people. I just see my opponent, and just kind of getting it's not a rut. It's just a good, way to conduct your business. I think do business in the ring, and afterward, enjoy all that stuff, I suppose.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Man, it should be pretty rough. You try every night you're wrestling.
Oh yeah, you don't know what city you're in from night to night sometimes.
That's right.
Because you're everywhere, and you're like, where is it? What day is it? What
Yeah.
Where we are? What city are we in? What's
I know. I was used to ordering my dinner whenever it would get dark. You call room service and order your dinner, and then you go to the town, you wrestle, and you come back and you eat your dinner cold, sitting as the room service is closed by the time we get home. And so I'm working up in Calgary, and or near there. I don't remember where it was, but I look outside. I'm in a hotel, and it's like I'm waiting for it to start getting dark to order room service, and it was like on the day off. That's what it was. And I noticed that it's 10:30 at night. It's still daylight out there. I thought, what? I couldn't believe it, and so I didn't eat that night. That's the farthest north I worked, I suppose. I don't remember where that was. I think it could have been outside of somewhere else. See, just like you just said, they run together, don't they?
They run together. They certainly do. But I tell you one thing: week after week, the auditorium. I mean, that was the place. I mean, that was such an amazing building and a venue. When you guys had your tremendous run there, and when we were talking about the heels going to the ring from the locker room, and what was going to happen to them because of how the fans believed intensely about it. On the other side, when you and your brothers made your way to the ring, it was almost like the girls were pulling, they're trying to reach you and grab you. And it was like almost like, rock and roll heroes going into the ring. And that's the type of reaction you had. So kind of reminisce with us a little bit on how that was. The fact that you and your brothers were like rock stars in the state of Texas and other places in the Southwest.
Well, our fans did love us, and we knew that. We loved our fans too. We tried to be different in the way where we let our kids come right up to the ring, get autographs, touch us, talk to us, and we'd always try to make each kid feel like, we're listening to them and, talking to them. It's so hard, but you know what? It's worth it. It really is, because the fans, when you can interact with them, they really do get closer to you, I guess. Maybe that's it, but because when we would go to the ring, we'd have scratches over our shoulders, and where the girls would try to stop us. Wow. You should see my shoulders to this day, scars all, and Kerry's, where they try to grab us to talk, you get really raked up, lots of little girls, and the bright lights, and they're all of a sudden the bright lights are on them, so they get a little stronger, I guess. They scratch us pretty good, but they just want to touch you, and talk to you. And it's like, I wish other companies would do so. I know they're worried about insurance and all, but I think it really paid off. The fans have a better time, and that's what it's all about, is the fan. I think the fans, they should let people come back up, and heck with all that insurance, don't worry about that. Let them sign a waiver if you're so worried about it, because I think it's important. Priority one is the fan.
That is true. I mean, those are the ones that keep the lights on for the promotions, and the fans do like to get close to their heroes. I tell you, one really interesting thing for me to ask you was about the enormous popularity that the Von Erichs had in Israel.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, so kind of talk to us about that. And I was like, I was talking to another like a historian, a friend of mine named Don Liable, and he's over at spring training, watching some baseball today. And he called me, and I said, I'm going to interview Kevin in just a little bit. And he goes, ask him about Israel. Ask him about how big they were in Israel. And I had no clue. So I'd love to hear this story for the first time, direct from you.
Well, I couldn't put it into words, to tell the truth. Something about Israel. I got a fan letter from I believe it was the Palestinian town of Nablus. I believe it was. Might have been. Anyway. A girl sent me a letter, and it was such a nice letter. And I actually wrote a letter back to her. I told her I loved Israel, and my wife, my daughter wrote the letter back to her. She's a little girl, so my daughter wrote to her, but I did, send a little something too. And they were like, and we went ahead and she mimeographed that letter off. You remember, she would run copies of that letter off and give them. They sent them everywhere to the Jews and Palestinians. That's there's this fight that they have going on, but I'm telling you, there are other forces at work there, because the big part of Israel wants to love each other. I'm telling you, at wrestling and sporting events, they sit right together. And when our show was on, they actually told me that's the only time there's a ceasefire. They told us that. That's the only time you can really count on the ceasefire is when wrestling is on for that hour. It sounds crazy, but it was really true. And they're just the people that, I hate to slight anyone, but when you go to other countries, some people are just happier than others. You go to Africa, the children, the smiles, they're genuine, they're real, and they just jump off their faces, the beautiful little children. And in Israel, it's the same way. They're so joyful. They are so full of happiness over there. And I'm telling you, I felt so at home there. They don't believe in Jesus. They're Christians, and I do. But man, we got over that too. I mean, I'm never be ashamed of my Jesus. He has given me this joyful life, and I'd recommend this life to anyone. But you can't force that on people. You can just suggest, I suppose. Let your own life be a kind of an example, if you could. That's kind of what I guess I hope to do. We want what we've gone through to have some kind of a benefit for our fellow man, and have suffered for no reason. I'd like to know that it helped someone. Do your best to, kind of catch your bread on the water, put other people as more important than yourself, and your life turns so much better when you put other people ahead of yourself. I would never known that until I tried it. I mean, that's.
So that country had a big effect on your life.
It sure did. And I've gone back a few times since, and anytime I get a chance to go back, I have. I've just loved it over there. I did their Tonight Show and their all of their TV shows, and just it was just surrounded by love. So they're so grateful. I don't know if grateful's the word. They're just super fans. It was like Puerto Rico, but not. I don't know how to put it. They're just big fans. It was
a different country, but the love was there with the fans, and the relationship that you had in that country.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah. So I mean, when you look back at the other place, that the enormous popularity, that's where your home base was, the Sportatorium. Yeah. Did you ever get a chance to kind of visit there before that building went away? Do you remember the last time that you might have went to the Sportatorium and just to reminisce or look around?
Yeah, they were doing. We did video a long time ago, and the closing down of the Sportatorium and those days, and I remember going through there with the producer. I can't remember his name, but we went through the building and. He shot me going through there, and it was just it had been ransacked pretty good, and it was not like the before. And I hadn't seen they had wrestling for a few years there before they closed it down. It wasn't anything I was connected with at all. But so they changed the dressing rooms around. It didn't look like it did when I'd seen it before. But yeah, there's video out there of me walking the building and kind of giving a little tour of it, and I think it's called Heroes of World Class.
Okay. And just the memories and the fact that you were able to get there one last time, even though things changed and they might have changed the dressing rooms, but it still had that. It's Sportatorium. This is where our legacy was built.
Yeah.
That's
amazing. Had that smell.
I was there, I spent time at the Sportatorium and saw some amazing matches there, and it always was kind of a cool barn. It was kind of a place that it was like, this is wrestling right here, and this is what it's supposed to be like. And it was.
John, did you try the food when you were there?
I don't recall.
French fries. They had French fries. They had tacos, hamburgers, and they sold out like crazy. They everybody talked about, I hope, are they open for lunch? I mean, I heard so many writers write that they're so impressed by the food there. Is it open for lunch? So I know there's a talk about the building stunk and all that. I'm telling you, they wouldn't have sold so much food if it was a dirty building. It might have been old and run down, but it wasn't dirty. You know, they kept it clean, but it did have a smell about it. I don't know what that smell was, but it was a sportatorium. That was it.
It was, I mean, it was just a historic place. And one thing about you, I mean, in comparison to your brothers as far as in-ring, and the one thing that always stood out to me was the fact that you chose not to wear boots in the ring. And I know there's a story. There's got to be a story behind that. And I know you revered in the early days Jimmy Snuka because he wrestled barefooted as well. So tell us a little bit about why that was the decision that you made that was different from what your brothers did, and you decided, like, hey, I'm just not going to go in there and wear boots.
Well, you know, I wanted to do the best I could do. I wanted to be able to fly if I could. You know, I came off the top rope, and I wanted to get as high as I could, and I did. Yeah. And with those boots, with the socks too, they soak up sweat, and they're heavy. You know, I'm telling you, for me, I want to fly. You know, I want to. My dad always told me, don't be an acrobat. And I wasn't an acrobat because I was heavy, but I did come off the ropes a lot, and there were no counters for anything I did back then. And so it was great, you know, and so I kept it like that. And taking the boots off, I've heard that it was because I forgot them one night, or some of the boys hid them, which they did before. That has happened. But the real reason is I just felt so much better barefooted. I could move quicker.
You're more agile, and that was your personal style. You were able to fly faster. You were able to do things better with your comfort level, and that kind of gave you a bit of an advantage. So you could do things that were kind of memorable and exciting. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, the agility.
Cool. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I mean, you know, this interview is really great for me. I mean, to be able to talk to you and to reminisce a bit with you, and the legacy of the family is still there, not with your sons, with yourself, and there's even a movie coming out. I don't know if you want to talk about that. That's coming out. It's called The Iron Claw, and it's backed by a major film studio. Do you have any thoughts? Are you know, any comments about what's going to be happening with this movie and what your involvement might have been or might not have been with the film?
No, I can't help you there at all, John. I have no idea what's going to come out. Not a bit.
Yeah.
Now, now my boys have got a little part in it. They're going to be wrestlers in the scene. You can see if you can pick where they are, but I don't have any idea what it's about, the script or anything. I don't know what it's going to be. You know, I'm into the public domain. I've been a wrestler so long. Yeah, and so I'll be surprised, but I'll watch it. I'll guarantee I'll see it.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's you know, certainly people are beginning to talk about it since it's, I guess it's done with production and the fact that the legacy and the history and the name of the Von Erichs and what they meant is being turned into a major motion picture is really interesting. When I learned about it, I was like, this is interesting. But like you said, I mean, you'll watch it, you'll see, you'll comment on it at that time, I guess. And,
I did talk to the director, Sean Durkin. I called him and I told him, I said, man, there's a lot of stuff out on YouTube that's just not true. And I know you're trying to put a movie together, and I just want you to know, my brothers, we loved each other so much. I want you to make sure that if you make a movie about it, you got to cover it like that. And I said they were really popular in school. Everybody liked my brothers. Everybody. I was the problem. I was the guy that couldn't get along with people. Hard to get to like. Hard to get to know. You know. But I wanted them to know my brothers they were first class people. You know. I was the oldest brother, and maybe that's it. But I wasn't that likable, I guess. I don't know. I want to be likable. This is the way you are. That's the way I am. Not you, John. That's just the way I am, you know. I mean, I don't know why. It's just the way it is, though.
Well, all I know is, like, from talking to you, I like you a lot. I mean, this is kind of so cool for me. And, you know, everybody has phases in life, and everybody changes their life, and everyone chooses the path they're going to take. And, you know, so everyone has things in the past that they're, like, not very happy about. I mean, but as you get older, And as you get, myself as a man of faith, I'm not over the top but I know what's in my heart, and I believe in God. And I know that anything that I do in my life and the people that I interact with, you're always going to try to put your best foot forward, and you're going to try to love everybody. I mean, that's kind of the way I live my life, even in the wrestling business.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, me too, John. That's it. I love about the movie. I told him, that we loved each other and all that, but he told me that he said, I'm not going to put anything in the movie that I didn't hear you say in an interview or a radio show or whatever. And so, man, I've been doing this for like 25 years. And so that could be anything. No telling what I've said over those 2.5 decades. But he did say that he's going to try to make this a true movie. And I mean, I'll tell you, I did have some rough times. And I'll tell you, I've got my sweet, good wife, been married for 40, coming up on 40, over 40 years. And I don't want to add it up here in front of the viewers, but she's been a great wife. And I have to say a whole lot. She would just come with a scripture for me. This is the right one to thank you, Lord. Because if there's a time when what's going on here? What's happening, Lord? God, what is this? I mean, you got to be honest, man. I'm not going to pretend for anybody. I talk to God. What's going on here? I got the truth, and I have no complaints. I'm completely love God. I know what He's done for me, and I mean, I don't want to beat you all over the head, but I know the key to happiness, and I just wish I could tell everybody.
Yeah, it seemed like you seem so happy, and even when I saw some of that footage of you sitting, looking out onto the water, and I mean, you just look peaceful, serene, very at peace with yourself and with your life and with your family. So, I mean, that's a blessing to be able to have that inner peace, especially with the history of everything that you had to endure and the popularity, the tragedy, and everything else that your life encompassed. I mean, you lived a whole life, and now you're at probably, from what I'm perceiving, is the happiest that you've ever been.
Yeah, it is. I guess that's the way it should end up too. Go through it, and at the end you're happy. So I could have no complaints, complaints at all.
Well, this has been a pleasure for me. I want to bring Marsh on, our producer, because when we had that little technical glitch, I mean, he was like, I had this song. So, Marsh, why don't you kind of explain to Kevin and myself? I mean, this is a friend of yours, and I think Kevin is familiar with this recording.
Yeah. My understanding is Kevin may have a very clear recollection of, because this was in '95. A friend of mine who I befriended him when I moved to New York. It was like 2011-ish. Wait, yeah, is that about right? I don't know. But he was the first friend I made when I was out there. His name's Cornmo, and
I know him.
Yeah.
What a guy. Yeah, I like that guy.
Exactly. So he opened for a band that I really liked when I was living in Arizona, and I reached out to him on MSN Messenger at the time, and he moved to New York, and I went to a show. That was the first thing I did when I got there. Is he happened to be playing that weekend, and I reached out to him like after the show, and he was like, "Let's go hang out," and he's been a friend ever since.
Yeah, what a likable guy. Tell him hello for me. I do know him. Great guy.
Yeah. He did say also to tell you hello, because I let him know that I was on a call with you. And
Good.
I was like, this is cool. So, yeah, he wrote that song "Shine On Golden Warrior," which I've heard 100 times, and I heard that you have a copy of it too. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I don't. I was on Twitter, and I had all that stuff. And without Twitter, I don't have records anymore. I mean, I guess I put all that away a long time ago. But I don't know if anybody has LPs anymore. I used to have all of them. I guess they're going reel to reel and other formats.
So anyway, are we going to edit that song in so the fans can get an opportunity to hear that, Marsh? And then when we send Kevin the link, then he'll be able to hear it again after maybe a long time.
Been a long time, yeah.
We could do either way. I have it queued up. I could play it right now if you'd like to hear it, or I can splice it in with little photos over top of it later. Or...
Sure.
Yeah. Why don't we give it a listen then, if that's okay with you, Kevin?
Yeah.
I've never heard it. I mean,
well, it was the Edge Fest, and I did. I was the MC for the Edge Fest, in Dallas at some rock place, and that there was he was there, and we just got along so great. I got along with all those kids. It was just all wrestling fans too. The Deep Blue something and Toadies and what good kids! It was a great time. Anyway, and I got into my first mosh pit. And I thought somebody ran in and said, "Somebody owes me an apology." It's fun.
Give it a listen.
He still plays the song in most of his sets that I've seen, and he still tells the story about meeting you and what a great guy you are. So
that was a great time.
Here we go.
Well, let's hear the song. Cool.
Yeah.
Kevin Von Erich came to visit me at my house, and all my friends there round us now to never look cool. How I wish that I was in Jessica Junior High School. Shine on, golden warrior. Carry on the legend of a hero flying through arena air. Shine on, golden warrior. Doing back and top the side of the ring. Shine on.
Well,
We squeezed all the stories we could out of you. We told us about your brother being Andre the Giant, getting bar fight. About you and Kamala hanging with favorite soldiers at an airport all night. Fights with Freebirds, adventures in Africa. Man, what a life! Shine on, golden warrior. Down the legend of a hero flying through arena air. Shine on, golden warrior. Doing back and top the side of the ring. Shine on, golden warrior. Take on the world with the iron war. And the time is off, your mind will take flight. Off the side of the ring, shine on, golden warrior, warrior, shine on, golden warrior, warrior, shine on, golden warrior, warrior, shine on.
I never understood it like that.
Golden
You know, I never heard it this well. I never could really make out the words like that. That was a
High
real rock
energy.
song.
Yeah. That's very, very cool. Thank you, Marsh, for bringing that up. That's
Mark. Thanks a lot for that. I'd heard it before, but it wasn't with the headphones like this. So you can hear every word with this. And I couldn't make out a lot of it.
Yeah.
That was good.
And this was a remaster
Oh,
a couple years ago. So.
That's a remaster. Okay, very cool.
Oh yeah,
I enjoyed it. It's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Wow, this has been a great interview. I mean, I really am grateful to you and to Christian to hook it up, and J.R. Shulman, who.
Well, hey, man, John, call me again. With 30 years, there's some more shows. Let's call me up and we'll do it again. Because that was fun. I don't mind a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool to hear your stories and reminisce with you. And thank you. And I want to wish you the best. And I want to wish your boys the best. And if there's anything we do, I mean, AEW, man, it's a perfect place for them.
I think so, too.
Yeah. So I wish you the best on that. And I want to thank you for your time today. It's been amazing to talk to you.
Thank you guys, both of y'all. Appreciate it so much. And come out here and see me. That'd be good. Come on out here and we'll have a good time.
I love it. I love it.
Come on.
All right, cool.
Take it easy, fellas.
That was great. That was awesome.
It was really cool. And it was nice to have that moment with him at the end, too. That was really special for me. And it seemed like Kevin, and I'm sure our mutual friend is going to be very appreciative as well.
The band.
Yeah, the band. Cornmo and 357 Lover.
That was a very upbeat musical selection, man. It was cool. I mean, and he lit up. So anyway, it was great. And what a great show. This was another good one, man. It's like another one in the books.
Yeah. This was a really neat one because it just so many components, and it's been really fun to put this one together. This one they're all feeling more and more special as we go. And I love that.
Yeah. This was a roller coaster, from the sadness of reminiscing about the unfortunate tragedy with Kerry and then listening to Cactus and Paul E. and some of the callers. And it was all over the place, but it was, and James Beard, of course. And it's something, it was just like, it was an amazing show today with all these elements in it. Crazy.
I mean, and it's feeling like these are also becoming in its own way, like really an homage to the old ones. You know what I mean? Like this was the spirit of the original show, was the chaos.
That was always the intention. That's what I was trying to get to. And it really is, like I say, almost every week now, the real star with clips, man, going back and hearing the clips. But when you get an opportunity to bring a special guest on, like in real time today, that makes it even more special, especially when they haven't heard, like when Eric Bischoff heard for the first time. And hopefully we'll have more of that coming up. We'll do our very best to try to bring somebody on every week. And we're going to have we're having a fun ride now with this, and we'll continue to do so. And Marsh, of course, I want to thank you, as I always do, for all of the hard work you put into this. We were talking offline about how this is, even when I was with Brian and Jason Nacarado and Lou Kippelman, and the time they put into assembling Pro Wrestling Spotlight then and now, as the show's called, when we first started it in 2019. It is a difficult show. Well, I'm not the guy editing, but you tell us. I mean, it is kind of it's probably the most unique type of wrestling podcast out there.
Yes, and I think that what I've been trying to do the most is provide a unique visual aspect to that as well. Like,
yes,
you can be a unique style show, but I want that to come off the page, It's a lot. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the Lanny Poffo segment ended up the way that it did, was I was trying to do the captions like I did for the British Bulldog. 2 days of failing at it, and I said, all right, no captions, like, and it just kind of ended up at what it was. But like, yeah, doing these is a lot of work, and it's very rewarding at the same time.
Yeah, and I appreciate all of the thought you give and how you can make the show better visually for the YouTube folks that and the patrons. They get it early, of course. But yeah, thank you, and let everybody know how they can find you on social media.
Yeah, they can find me at Ref Marsh on Twitter and WrestlingOnTheRocks.com for all of the other links and stuff to my other projects that I work on. So,
Lots of other projects. Now you're heading out to the West Coast soon, too, out in California for the WrestleMania extravaganza.
Yes. For WrestleCon, I will be out there. I'm going to be out there with Medusa. I'm going to be hanging out with her for her signings, and she's doing a movie premiere thing, and I'll be there for that as well. Yeah, I'll be around.
Her book is coming out really soon, and the week of April the 10th. Make sure you put that on your calendar because you work with her all the time. You tell her that she's coming on the show. It's the 30th anniversary of her first appearance here, and that's right around the time her book is going to be out. The Woman That Would Be King. What an amazing book. It's going to be a big seller. That book is going to be a big seller. And I was happy to be the guy that talked to ECW Press about her and then hook her up with Greg Oliver. And, now there's a big book coming out. And the other book that I have coming out, I mean, I just set Medusa up with Greg and ECW Press, and they did their thing and got the deal, and now the book's coming out. But the John Gibbons book is coming out April the 4th. Wow. And that one I got for John, and it's called Gibby, Tales of a Baseball Lifer. And there's tons of interviews that we've scheduled right now. And the podcast is going to be starting up again with him pretty soon now that baseball's getting into spring training. So very busy, happy to be so busy. And when you see Deborah Medusa again, just say Pro Wrestling Spotlight, whatever that Wednesday is going to be.
Yep.
We're going to bring her on. So we'll coordinate that
happen.
with you, Marsh. Thank
sure.
you so much for another week, man. And that's going to wrap up this edition of John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight. You can hear all of the archives at patreon.com/John Arezzi. $5 a month gets you in the door. We have a private group on Facebook, which is doing well, at the Pro Wrestling Spotlight podcast and radio show. We have a public page called Matt Memories on Facebook, and the engagement there is off the chart. Very, very good. There's a private group under Matt Memories as well that you have to answer a couple questions to get in. Our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Pro Wrestling Spotlight. I ask you all, if you haven't already, please subscribe and check out the content there. There's a lot of great video on our YouTube channel. If you want to follow me on socials, it's at John Arezzi on Twitter. It's at John Arezzi on Instagram. And if you want to send some comments about this program, good, bad, ugly, suggestions, advice, questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Send me an email, and it is prowrestlingspotlightja@gmail.com. Don't forget about the other podcast that we do wrestling related. It's Matt Memories from Madison Square Garden, taking you back 50 years and covering those house shows that I attended in succession from 1971 to 1977, every single one of them. And we're about to release the February 23rd, 1973 house show, King Curtis against Pedro Morales, Mil Mascaras against Buddy Wolf. Vern Gagne was on the show. So we talk about all of that. And ironically, I shot 8mm film of most of those matches, which included Dory Funk Sr. on the show against Victor Rivera. Terry Funk was in there as well in a singles match. It's going to be, it's great. It's great movie footage. If you are a patron, you know what I'm talking about. If you're one of our patrons, and watch these 8mm clips that we have up there for everybody in their tier to enjoy. And the Matt Memories from Madison Square Garden show, by the way, is co-hosted by a gentleman named Tim Poutre, and it's written and researched by our good friend Richie Garcia. I want to thank Marsh for producing and being the creative director for this podcast. And I want to thank our Patreon executive producers, Anthony Pyrus and Joseph Holloway, and for all the patrons for your support, helping with the production costs for this show. Until next week, when we have Ultimate Warrior from 30 years ago, we bring back Donnie Liable and also Larry from LNS Comics. We will relive more history with you at that time. This is John Arezzi for the Pro Wrestling Spotlight.